We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast, where we are going to get into the Doge Report as we do every week. I have in studio with me Andy. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Joy.
So, what's been going on with Citizens Doge this week?
Well, it's been a pretty busy week. We had our.
All right, we're just going to switch mics.
Okay. Sorry about that. Well, to answer your question, we had a very busy week. We had a volunteer barbecue on Friday evening in Wilton, as I believe I mentioned in our last report, and we had a good crowd show up, about 25 people, and all loyalists who we are used to seeing at this point at all of our meetings, and cooked some food, networked for about an hour and a half after the festivities and the presentations and the speeches were done. We had two great speakers, one of whom was Davis Miller from Turning Point Action. He's the New Hampshire field rep, lives out in Stratford County, and the other was Brian Cole, who is a state rep from Manchester. I almost said Merrimack County. That's not right. I was thinking about David Loveland, who's a good friend of ours, who's from Merrimack County, who's the commissioner there. But yeah, we had a busy week in terms of appearances as well. Mike and I went to the Hollis GOP meeting on Tuesday evening after the show last week. Scott Brown, among others, had a speaking engagement there. That same night, we also had someone cover for us to go to the Sullivan County GOP meeting. I want to give a special shout out to Annette Menard, who is our Sullivan County lead up in the Connecticut River Valley there. She spoke for us at that meeting, and we had some good correspondence coming from the leadership of that committee soon afterwards, and so we want to thank Annette for that.
Nice.
And also at the barbecue, we announced an initiative that Mike and I had been doing some discussion about previous to the barbecue, as well as in previous weeks, which was a project called Doge Voices. Now, this template, to be perfectly fair, is not entirely novel. There was a program many people know about called Walkaway that started, founded by Brandon Straka, I believe, after the January 6th events in D.C. 4 years ago, of getting people to submit stories, video testimonials about how and why they left the Democratic Party and what was their breaking point.
2016.
Oh, it actually goes back to 2016.
Yeah.
Okay, I always pride myself on knowing timelines.
Yeah,
because
he did get locked up. So that was 2016, Trump's first run. Hillary Clinton was just absolutely dismal. So then and she, we can get into it later. But basically, she ran on the fact that she has a vagina. So because that's a qualification for office. It's, vote for me because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I'm black.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, identity politics all the way. But at any rate, yeah, Mike and I had a discussion about how to sort of engage people more in being able to not only share but spread their stories about things they're seeing going on in their local neighborhoods, their local towns, and have that maybe not necessarily be something that could go viral, but could be something that could create a connective tissue throughout New Hampshire and perhaps beyond New Hampshire if we grow our membership fast before the end of the summer. And so what we encourage people to do, if you're a member of Citizens Doge, we ask that you record yourself with your cell phone or with your laptop. If you go to a local town meeting, a town select board meeting, a school council meeting, if there is something that you see that isn't right, if there's something that you hear that isn't right, if there's a line item in the budget that you see is suspicious, or even especially if you get it taken out, as one of our members did earlier this year, as we've discussed, please post this to social media. We don't ask you to send it to us directly, but please post it to social media. Tag hashtag Doge Voices. Tag our at Citizens Doge USA if you're on X, and this can begin to spread our message and spread our sense of urgency about what's going on here in New Hampshire. As we've discussed many times on this show, there are so many things in all the towns, not just in this immediate area, Hillsborough County and Rockingham County, but all throughout the state, of examples where people are seeing things that don't look right, and that are throwing their town budgets and their towns underwater and worse. We want to start to make a record of these things. If we do it through this project, Doge Voices, we encourage people to get on that and start to spread it around.
And you know what this is, because I was reminded of this online, right? A couple of years back, my town, Derry, New Hampshire, had a beauty pageant that went viral nationally because they elected a fat trans chick as they gave her the award, and there were objectively cute, beautiful young women up there that could have actually been considered, but instead it was this like horrendously fat, ugly trans dude thing. And I'm sitting there going, and this is a red town. This is a red town where every state rep is a Republican. How did it happen in our town? Because people stopped paying attention.
Right.
People stop paying attention. It should be very easy to simply sit up here and say, you're a guy. Irrespective of whether you want to be a woman or not, you're not a woman. You're not going to compete in a competition that is solely for young girls. You're sure as hell not going to take opportunities away from these young girls in the spaces that are for young girls. It's like, it's baffling. And this guy brings it up and he goes, wow, it was New Hampshire Journal had an article about posting the reddest, the best towns for conservatives to move into New Hampshire and live in. And I said Derry and Londonderry, two solid red towns, right? He's like, yeah, wasn't that the one that had the fat trans chick? He's like, yeah, solid pass. I go, dude, it's been Republican held for like 2 decades. Like it is a solid red area. Londonderry, Derry, friggin' Salem. Like these are areas that we're going to have a solid red ticket. We're not going to have to worry about losing a seat. But we lose on the shit that happens in the back end that we don't pay attention to.
Well, now I've got additional insight about why Londonderry's infamous town manager in 2023 and 24 had to flee. I'll tell you some stories about that off camera, but I know the individual, and they're quite a character.
There's a lot of real characters in New Hampshire politics. Yes. We ride this weird line of like, you have a lot of old school neocon Republicans that moved here from Massachusetts like 20 years ago, and they're like, Mitt Romney was my kind of guy. And it's like, yeah, nobody actually likes Mitt Romney. We kind of just tolerate him.
And it's so embarrassing. I've heard some of those people. It's so embarrassing when you come across them.
Yeah, it's like, man, I just love George Bush. I love John McCain. I'm like, you love the bomb Iran? I don't fucking believe it. So, and it's because it's like when people say that, I'm like, you could tell me you like their policies. All right, and we could have a debate about that, but that's fine. But when you say like, oh man, I love that person, I'm like, all right, in what realm of cult of personality does anybody go, God damn, fucking John McCain and Mitt Romney just get my engines going in the morning? Like, I don't fucking believe it. But you have those guys that move down here. You have the libertarians. They've had the Free State Project for the past, going on 26 years now. And they've had a massive influence on shifting legislation towards liberty in the state. But they got a lot of weirdos. There's a lot of weirdos. There's a lot of weird people who like say crazy shit like, maybe we should get rid of the age of consent. How about fucking not? Or maybe, child labor isn't that bad. I'm like, or it is, and we should not be going backwards because you want to make an intellectually purist point so that you can, be the guy that everybody in your neat little circle of autistic buddies cheers on.
And they fail to see.
And then you got the Democrats, you got the progressives.
Yeah.
What was it? Tim Horgan, the vagina hat wearing friggin' state rep. He's like 65-year-old white guy. Looks like that nutty professor with the weird haircut and the glasses and the tweed jacket and stuff. But he's got a vagina hat on. And he is just all in on women's rights, man, to abort your babies. Yep. But no other women's rights except aborting your babies. So... And then you got you actually do have some blue dog Democrats up here. They'll vote for a Republican like Sununu or a Republican like Kelly Ayotte because all they really want is look, dude, I just don't want taxes. And I'm fine with keeping my guns, but I don't like the MAGA people, and I don't like Trump, and I don't like all that. So though you have those this weird conglomerate of people that still pull the state towards liberty more often than not. Which is fucking awesome,
and it's a few degrees right of center usually, and that's the tenuous line. I think that's very precarious because being from Massachusetts originally, I know that this in-migration from my state has been going on for a very long time. I could give specific examples, but it would take too long. But yeah, the situation in the state right now that Mike and I are seeing is that. When we've gone around, and it's mostly in this area, but we have spread around when we could. For instance, a couple of weeks ago, we were in Laconia in Belknap County. Is that people understand there's a sense of urgency, but they don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
What we're essentially trying to do is give them a sense of urgency and some semblance of a framework of, well, here's some things you can do now, and here's some things you can do with us that we're also willing to do with you. We're not just here to be, armchair. People standing up in front of a room saying, "Hey, why don't you go out and do this?" We actually want to do this with people.
Yeah. The actionable steps people can take because that's the problem, right? Is we all get online and we can all bitch about something, and we'll spend the weirdest thing is the amount of people who will tell you to your face, "I don't have the time to go out and door knock or do phone calls or do all this stuff, or sine wave or write 91 A's to my school board or make phone calls and stuff like that," but they spend 3 hours a night bitching online. And I'm like, no, you have the time. You just would rather do it from the comfort of your armchair with your cell phone in your hand. That's just not productive. Because the people who are passing legislation honestly don't give a fuck about what you say online. Unless you're some major, huge influencer that has the ability to actually sway people's votes or sentiments towards one thing or another. And this is something that happens on both sides of the aisle, right? Is you have this group of people who you wish were more engaged, like physically engaged, who aren't. And if we can figure out a way to activate those people through every single election cycle, so that it's not just high turnout during the presidential year and low turnout during the off-year elections or the state elections or the local elections. If we can figure out how to tap those people who care or who bitch and whine and get them to care outside of just the presidential election cycle, we can really make change throughout the country. So which means our first step needs to be what you guys are doing, activating people, educating people, and then giving them actionable steps of what they can do and how they can be effective.
Yeah, this is certainly what we're trying to do. And my personal belief is that we'll know by this time next year which way the midterms are going to go. And if the midterms are swinging in a way that you and I both hope that, we can avoid, but if the clouds look ominous at this time next year, my personal prediction is New Hampshire and a lot of other states that will be at issue in the 2028 election cycle will be at risk of losing their red majorities, and we obviously don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, which brings us to, you know what? I'm a big fan of, you know, calling out the people who wear the jersey on your own team, right? We're on the same team. I have to be honest about the fact when you're doing something that's counterproductive, right? But there needs to be some sort of boundaries where you don't go personal, because what I'm seeing online is the personal attacks of people. I can disagree with Kelly Ayotte on her you know, women's spaces, you know, not vetoing that bill. I can disagree with her on that. And I can agree with her on passing other bills, like the getting rid of the mask mandates and shit. I can, you know, and I don't have to judge her as a person. Just because that's your niche issue that you make your entire personality around does not mean that that is everybody else's niche issue. The vast majority of voters in the state care about their wallet, their kitchen table, what's in their gas tank, what's coming over the border, whether they're not they're going to be able to show up to work tomorrow, and whether they're going to be able to crack open a 6-pack of beer at the end of the week and enjoy their time off, and hopefully retire one day without passing down, you know, and pass down something to their kids other than debt. Yeah. That's what the vast majority of people in the country care about. And once Republicans figure that shit out and run on the shit people care about, we win, which means our focus on everything needs to be transparency, accountability, efficiency, and efficacy.
And making the best of alternatives, because, you know, next year, I mean, I don't know. Neither of us knows who the Democrats' gubernatorial choice is going to be, but it figures to be somebody about as radical as Joyce Craig was, if not further left. So. It's going to be a question of alternatives again, and this issue right now going on with the veto that Governor Ayotte just put in on the men and women's spaces issue is it's going to linger for a while, but you know, this time next year it's going to be a question of alternatives again, and we think that the progressive alternative is just one we can't take.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with people. There is not a single person in this state who can honestly convince me that I should sit at home and not vote, or that I should vote for a Democrat or somebody who can't actually win an election just to flip the finger to Kelly Ayotte when the alternative is worse. Now, I would rather get into a position where there are enough of people like you and me where if we wanted to come to Kelly Ayotte and be like, hey, you need to stand strong on this, and this, and here's a whole conglomerate of votes that are going to come with you agreeing to do this, and this. Then you have the ability to affect change and change policy and change how she runs the administration in the next term, which is what we should be doing. But the whole like, oh man, you know, I can't vote for that person because, you know, this is my one issue. I'm like, single issue voters aggravate the shit out of me because, and normally, what are the two that typically pop up, right? Guns and
reproductive
abortion.
rights. Yeah.
Single issue voters piss me off, and the reason why is, so I'm like, oh, so you can't ban that chick getting an abortion, so you're gonna vote against them. And vote for you're going to vote against the Republican and vote for either the Libertarian, who's also pro-choice, or the Democrat, who's also pro-choice, or you're not going to vote so that the Democrat or the Libertarian, who are both pro-choice, win over the moderately pro-life Republican. And I'm sitting here going, how does that make any sense? Because if those two win, any moderately pro-life legislation we have is going to come off the books as soon as possible. If we lose the majority, it comes off the books. So any lives that were being saved aren't being saved now. So this is the issue of strategy. Do you want to stand up and wave your sword in the air and die on your hill and say, I died the righteous fight? Or do you want to win the long-term war and save as many lives as possible? Because I don't believe wars are fought by guys who stand up and go, charge! Yeah. They're not won by those guys. They're won by tacticians who understand what to use your troops for, when to use them, how to use them.
Exactly right. And looking long time horizon, but also understanding the mindset of the left. This is one of the things I know that you are very passionate about as well as I am. Mm-hmm. That even as somebody who is still I still consider myself fairly newly minted as a self-identifying conservative. The last 5-6 years especially, mostly for personal reasons more than political ones, but as things have happened in my life and I've seen people I know and just seen things going on in the world move in ways or speak in ways that alarmed me or bothered me, I began to go, what is really behind all of these ideas that I was so, ensconced in as a younger guy? And what presumptions about the world and about human beings are like within this stuff that's coming out now and is making this political climate so poisonous. And once I really began to understand it and understand certain people that I had known in my life who were like seriously on the left and you could never brook compromise with them.
Oh yeah.
I was just like, oh wow, no wonder I'm a conservative now. Like I can't relate to these people at all anymore. I just can't relate to the way they see things.
It's gotten to the point where if you're on the left and you try to engage with your old friends on the left, you're Hitler. Mm-hmm. You're Mecha Hitler, and you're out there exterminating Jews and trans people or some shit like that. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck what you do inside your house. I don't give a fuck what you do in your personal time. I don't give a fuck who you marry, what you wear, what you smoke, what you eat, how you dress. I just don't care. Just don't talk to my kids about it. Don't ask me to pay for it. Don't try to shove it down my throat and force agreement to it. That's it. Don't weaponize government.
Yep.
That's where I land. That's where libertarians should stay. Don't weaponize the government. Let's get out of stuff and let's stick to the issues the vast majority of Americans care about. So up next, we are going to have a guest on, and we're going to get into some wild shit, right? We're going to get into how slavery is weaponized to get this Marxist proletariat revolution. Talked about it many, many, many times. We'll see you after the break. Next. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best-looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Welcome back to Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. As I said, we have in the studio with me Andy from Citizens Doge, and up next we have Wanjira Joya, a scholar in residence for the Mises Institute. I always say it wrong. I've been doing this for a long time. I should get it right by now. A nonprofit organization that exists to promote the teaching and research of Austrian school economics, individual freedom, honest history, and international peace in the tradition of Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard. So, thank you for coming on. I'm sorry we had a delay and we ended up being late. The producer said he had some technical difficulties.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So how are you doing today? Tell me what you think about the, you said you have a racing history to advance the socialist revolution. What's your perspective?
So that was about the debates about history. They say the debates are about history, but they're really about politics and about what people think the priorities in politics should be now, especially around issues of civil rights and what they call racial justice. So one of the points I make is that even though they say it's about what statues should we have showing and which statues should be taken down, my argument is that it's really a proxy for today's politics, because if you think about it, nobody really cares that much about what happened in 1860. You know, they'll say this is somebody that was there in 1865 and, you know, these are the things he said. Really, when they debate, for example, about the names of schools, do you really think children today going to school are concerned about whether the name of the school is about somebody who was there in the 19th century? I don't think so. I think it's a way for the Democrats to push what they call their social justice agendas, and the history wars are just another platform for them to do that.
I have often said, and I will maintain it, systemic racism is Marxism, cross-dressing is progressivism. And it is highly focused in the areas where there is no cultural, ideological, or political machine to combat it. And once they perfect their death, poverty, and destruction, they export it to the rest of the world through popular culture and the education system. All of these arguments regarding race, gender, religion, now gender identity, because apparently we don't know that, you know, if you're born with a twig and giggleberries that you're a guy. All of this is it's a way to, it's being used in lieu of class warfare, right? In order to create this oppressed oppressor narrative so that they can get their proletariat revolution. By convincing people that the rungs on the ladder to success are hidden, you convince them to stop climbing it, so the only thing they'll do is try to climb or tear down the ladder or anybody that's climbed it before them.
That's absolutely right. And it comes from Marxist theory. That's the class conflict that you mentioned. And it's gone through a few iterations. So they went from saying the oppressor oppressed matrices between the ruling class and the working class. And then that went through the sort of Frankfurt School of Marxism, where they said it's not just about class, but it's about, other groups that are oppressing others in society. And then critical race theory picked that up, and they
Yeah.
said, you classify one race as the oppressor race, you classify the other race as the oppressed race, and then you have to see everything through the prism of race. So one of the points that I've been making in my writing is that this is very collectivist thinking. So
Yes.
you decide the white race is the oppressor race, the black race is the oppressed race, and then if you want to know what anybody's opinions are, all you need to do is check what race they are, and suddenly that's supposed to tell you all their opinions and all their politics. It's absolutely poisonous. And worst of all, they're teaching this to children. They're teaching children that some of you belong to the oppressor race, and others of you belong to the oppressed race. And that's why they need the history wars. It's because they can use history to justify their current ideology. And why does it matter so much to them? It's because they have the solutions that they propose, saying, in order to fix this, you need to allocate money in the following ways that are coincidentally very advantageous to myself. That's what the race hustlers are all about. It's all about what they can get out of it.
I've often said that the reason why these, particularly when it comes to the black community, because obviously we had the history of slavery, Jim Crow, everything leading up to the 1960s and even to today. The reason why this issue persists is because, one, I'm in the middle of writing a book about what would have happened to the black community had Malcolm X and Dr. King not been killed, had they had their voices still lasted long, because both were a fan of calling out our own and both focused heavily on morality, both focused heavily on individual responsibility and on families. But one of the things that I see as a common thread is that they're all movements. It starts as a movement, then it becomes a cause, then it becomes a business, and it devolves to a racket. And we've seen this with everything. So, like, a good example of feminism, for example, would be first wave feminism is equal rights. Second wave feminism is normalization of those rights and acceptance of those rights. Third wave feminism would be militancy, and fourth wave would be regression, where your positions today end up arguing against everything you succeeded in getting in the past by undoing the very system you created that got you the equality you needed. So, and you see this with the racial movements on the left, but there is a group of hyper racialized thinking grifters on both sides of the aisle who take antagonistic positions against each other because they spend more time arguing with each other than talking to normal people about normal issues that the vast majority of people in the country care about. And the rest of us are sitting here going, I don't know how we got here. Why are we arguing about this? The vast majority of people in our daily lives, we walk down the streets, we interact with each other just fine, with no racial animus, no issues whatsoever. But there is an entire class of people who exist to keep the problems of the black community first and foremost in front of the black community, whether it be Hollywood making another movie about a black guy getting his ass kicked for 2 hours, like 12 Years a Slave, or the music industry propping up the lowest 1% demographic in the black community as what should be considered authentic black culture, which is absolutely retarded. And then you have the political influencer class on the right. It's black people bad. On the left, it's black people are incapable of success or doing thing without our white liberal help. And I find this because they're so often, this guy's trying to dismantle this person's talking points and vice versa. We never actually talk about solutions. We never actually talk about how the fastest way to get to liberty is transparency, accountability, efficiency, and efficacy. And if you apply those 4 principles to everything, you can get back to the Constitution.
It's I think that the problem is that many of the solutions to these problems are not interesting to the race hustlers. So if you take the question of the family, stable families, supporting children at school. I mean, supporting children at school is not very interesting.
Hmm.
It's very mundane things like making sure they get to bed on time, making sure they do their homework, reading to them. These things are not interesting to race hustlers. You aren't going to get much of a political platform
Hmm.
of things like this. That's why it's not interesting to them. When they say things like the topic that we started out discussing, when they say things like, we need to get this statue down,
Yeah,
we need to get there with our bulldozer and, crush it, it's these things that seem exciting to them.
of
Arguing for
course.
money to be allocated to schools, well, that's very exciting because often we're talking about huge sums of money. So
Yes.
that's very exciting to them. Talking about literacy rates and numeracy rates, that's not so exciting. They're not interested in that. This is the
No.
problem.
Yes, I completely agree. We've gotten past the ability to have reasonable discussions about things that actually matter, because it's just
Yeah.
not flashy. It doesn't get clicks, likes, shares, retweets, or subscribers. And unfortunately, the vast majority of voices in politics these days on both sides of the aisle do what they do for clicks, likes, retweets, and shares and subscribership. So where do you think we fix this? How do you think we can fix this going forward, and we can actually start? How do you educate people as to really what's going on past all the griftery?
I see the solution being in a return to people being less reliant on leaders and less reliant on politics and less reliant on the federal government. Because the
Agree.
federal government is never going to come into your home and read bedtime stories to your children.
Hmm.
So I think that it's about people taking power back to families and taking power back to communities and taking power back to the local level. I think it's at the local level where people are able to make the best strides, the biggest changes. So I think, for example, school board elections are much more important than, the presidential campaign.
Yeah.
It's just bringing things down to the local level and getting people involved at the local level and not just only interested in Republican Party politics, Democratic Party politics, but being interested in who's deciding policy for your local school, who's bringing in measures that are actually going to affect how you live your life from day
Hmm.
to day, your local politicians. I think this is where the real power lies. I think people get too overexcited about national politics. What's President Trump doing today? This is everyone's eyes following him from one escapade to another. And I don't think that's the most important issue when it comes to changing lives on the ground.
I completely agree. I think the social media is going to be the death of American society, because the average person is spending more and more hours. It increases every year, and we're starting to see studies come out right now that are showing that people are spending so much time online that it's warping their perception of the reality they live in daily. So now they're walking around with depression, anxiety, viewing the world through this hyper racialized, hyper sexualized, hyper antagonistic lens, and that leads you to view everybody as a combatant or a potential combatant. It's akin to being to the fog of war, thinking that you're constantly got to be at battle, and the vast majority of normal people who don't live online don't think like that, and can be effective in their local government if they drop the Twitter machines in our hands and get activated, where we can actually stop critical theory or critical pedagogy being taught in our schools, and a lot of this trans nonsense.
Something like critical race theory, when you look at it, it's so nonsensical.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met a person in real life who follows those theories. I've never met a person in real life who says they don't know what a woman is.
Yeah.
So it's a good illustration of that. And yet, on the public space, everyone's debating these theories. Everyone's, saying define Marxism, define critical race theory.
If
Well,
no, I think you're right. I completely agree. I think if you ask the average person what a Marxist is, they wouldn't be able to tell you.
yeah, and it doesn't really matter because I think here's a good example of this kind of debate. So one of the articles that I've written about is the meaning of self-defense. And I look at a lot of arguments about what's reasonable, case law about what's reasonable, what is the meaning of self-defense. That's great, but let's face it, if somebody invades your home in the night, you aren't going to say, oh, where's my book about self-defense that I need to study to tell me whether this is what should I do next? How many seconds should I wait before this is nothing to do with how people ordinarily live their lives. And I think that a lot of many of the problems that we're seeing in society could be fixed if we weren't so highly regulated by rules that are supposed to be telling us what we should be doing when common sense answers most of our questions.
I completely agree. I think one of the biggest failures in American politics is the vast majority of people within the DC Beltway industry, that whole industrial system, do not think like normal people. So they think, and they view the average person with this level of disdain, like abject disdain. You're those dirty, smelly Walmart people. And that because they view the average person with disdain, and this is regardless of color. I've found the exact same attitude on both sides of the aisle between, the same people. They go to the same schools, the same cocktail parties, the same institutes, the same the same organizations and stuff. They bounce around from, congressman to congressman, senator to senator on either side of the aisle. It doesn't matter. But this self-propagating industry here has such a low opinion of the American populace. It's like, no, we have to regulate everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you eat, everything you smoke, you wear, every person you interact with. And the vast majority of people are sitting here going, well, one, screw you, because you're not going to tell me what to do. And also, who the hell are you to tell me that you know more about my life than I do?
I mean, it's incredible. For example, look at some of the communists that we're seeing now coming into power, like the mayor of New York, and I think the mayor of Minneapolis coming in. I think everybody knows that communism doesn't work. You don't even need to have studied a great deal to know that it makes no sense to say that the state should own and regulate everything. It's usually the greatest danger at the moment is from regulation rather than even state ownership, although the mayor of New York was saying that the state will own the grocery stores so everybody can afford to buy groceries. I think most people would know that that makes no sense. And they vote for people despite the fact they can see the policies make no sense.
It's because emotions run the day. But I want everyone to follow you. Wanjiro Najoya. Again, she works at the Mises Institute. Go follow her. Erasing History to Advance Socialist Revolution. Political Moralizing about History of Slavery, Methodological Individualism, and Historical Analysis. Where can people follow you online and support your work?
So anyone who wants to read my articles can find them at mises.org. That's mises.org/Njoya, Njoya. And that's where you can find all the articles that you just listed. And just basically a comment on how concepts of liberty, individual liberty, should be informing all the political disputes that we see around us all the time. And one of the themes that I like to stress in all my writing is just the point we've been making, is to trust common sense and trust the principles that we all know about the importance of private property and individual liberty and voluntary exchange.
Agreed. I'd like to have you come back on in the future. I want to thank you for coming on. I've definitely enjoyed the discussion. It's nice to get to talk about something that's right in my wheelhouse.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on your show. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to have a short break, and then we got the next segment coming up. You know, it's been a long day. It's been a very, very long day. I'm like, woosah. All right. See you in a few. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
All right. Welcome back to the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. Again, you can find us online at RAMTV.LIVE. Go check the past episodes. You can follow our clips. We're on TikTok, Instagram, everything else. Follow RAMTV.LIVE on all social media platforms. We will be on Rumble and all that other stuff, and Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that. But so the big news right now: Trump accused Obama of treason. And everyone's going, oh my God, he's calling for the death of a U.S. president because treason comes with a death sentence and stuff. I was like, and one of you tried to take an actual shot at the head of the president of the United States. So kiss my ass. But on the flip side, we got to stop with the griftery, right? Everyone's going, oh my God, Obama's going to jail. Obama's going to jail. No, Obama's not going to jail. The elites protect themselves. All right, come on, let's be realistic. Can Trump try to do what Biden did to Trump? Yeah, he can. But I'm just throwing this out there. Haven't seen it happen yet. We're supposed to get Hillary Clinton locked up. Didn't happen. Supposed to get the Epstein files. Didn't happen. Supposed to get the MLK files and JFK files. Didn't happen. I'm starting to see a whole bunch of stuff that would have involved holding elites accountable, and I'm not seeing it happen. We were supposed to get rid of the FBI and CIA, right? It's still there. Because for some reason, Republicans think that we can weaponize and fix and run these organizations that are 99% leftists, populated. We think we can run them better than the left. I don't get it. Are we smoking crack? What crack are you smoking? Obama is not going to jail. I'm saying it right now. He's never going to be put in a yellow suit, a yellow jumpsuit. He's never going to be perp walked. Hell, we'll be lucky if he gets a smack on the hand. Oh, woosah. Well, you know what? I thoroughly enjoy doing this show, and I enjoy having Andy and Mike from Citizens Dogen, and I enjoy having great guests come on so we can talk about shit that actually matters rather than going over the constant griftery of everyone who is currently, there's about 30 spaces run by people with millions of followers online talking about something that's never going to happen. So everybody can chime in and give their little 2 cents about stuff they don't know about to make themselves feel special. Because you know what? It's easier to pontificate online about an elite getting accountability, which never happens, than it is to get active in your local government. Go to your school board meetings, go to your zoning board meetings, go to your town council, your city council, and be there to stop your property taxes from going up, to stop that person from shoving transgender theory or Marxist theory or critical race theory or whatever theory down your child's throat. Like, we can't agree. Oh, my Lord. Can we have a come to Jesus moment? Can we have a come to Jesus moment where everybody realizes you can be more effective on the ground in your local community than you can with the damn Twitter machine in your hand? It does not equate to you being a national activist. The vast majority of you people are the equivalent of the National Guard. You should be fortifying your communities against the next storm or natural disaster that happens to walk across the podium with purple hair and a vagina hat. Okay? That's what you should be fortifying your community against, the next Maggie Goodlander or the next Chris Pappas or the next whatever. Okay, the next Marjorie, what's her name, Jasmine Crockett, or the next AOC or Mamdani, or what is the dude that looks like the villain from Captain Phillips in Minnesota that just became mayor?
Oh, Jacob Fry.
Jacob Fry, yeah, that guy. We should be fortifying our communities against these socialists who seek to take them over instead of waving the banner for some fantasy land where all of a sudden the people who pull the strings in the world get their comeuppance. It doesn't happen. No. I'm sorry. I would like to tell you that it's going to happen, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. Okay? Now, can we focus on stuff that actually matters? All right. Well, that's my rant for the end of the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. You heard it here first. I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it. I think it's all a whole pile of crap that they're selling us to keep us distracted from the stuff that is really happening that we can actually have influence in. If you get active in your local community, you can legitimately change the tides of the entire nation. If Republicans can figure out how to if conservatives, real conservatives and normal critical thinking adults can figure out how to get the vast majority of these critical thinking people out, not just in a presidential election, but in your local, state, and off-year elections too, we can actually take this country back and get rid of the extremes on both sides of the aisle who constantly have us embroiled in all of these stupid arguments about crap that doesn't matter. So, next week, tune in. We're going to have another fiery episode where I'm going to chew out the entire world for doing dumb stuff. All right? Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. Back at you. Love you guys. Have a good week. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
All right, buckle up, everybody. This is a big day with a lot of information in it. Welcome to the Drew Allen Show. This is, of course, Drew Allen, your millennial minister of truth. Look, I want to talk about the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, but the first thing you need to understand, and there's so much to talk about and there's so much depth that honestly we need to get into. I decided to break this up into 2 episodes. So think of it this way with Trump-Russia collusion. You have before Trump won the presidency, right? And then you have after Trump won the election. That's how you need to look at this. Now, a lot of the Tulsi Gabbard stuff, a lot of the breaking news out there, some of it's breaking, some of it's not, but it is a very big deal. Nonetheless, this is really focused on Obama's role in December and afterwards. This is about how Trump-Russia collusion was used to undermine the will of the American people. And we're going to get there, and I will do that probably in the next episode. I'll touch on it at the end today. I'm just going to barrel through, but at a pace where hopefully, we can all glean what we need to from this. So just think of it in terms of that. You have before he was elected and after he was elected. Now, I want to start with the premise of Trump-Russia collusion because, we've got to go and take a trip back down memory lane, many of us, right? 2016 was not yesterday. It was quite a ways away in the past. And I knew that Trump-Russia collusion was a hoax. I knew it was a hoax from the very start. I knew it in 2016. And I will explain to you exactly why and how I knew that. To push the Russia hoax, one detail, right? One detail, ask yourselves what it is. One detail was absolutely necessary in furthering it. One thing absolutely had to be true, right? Or the entire hoax would fall apart. It had to be true, what? That Putin wanted Donald Trump to beat Hillary Clinton. If Putin didn't have a motive to beat Hillary Clinton, if Putin didn't have a motive to help Trump, then this hoax would fall apart. The hoax would end. It could not go any further. So just keep that in your mind. And you see, that's the poisonous little seed from which the Trump-Russia collusion hoax was born. And I've got my own bombshell I'll introduce to you when we get through this because I've never heard anybody talk about it. And it's pretty astonishing when you look at the timeline. There are some very important questions we need to ask. So the focus here is before Trump was elected. Now, like I said, I'll get into that intelligence report in a little bit. Now, the accepted knowledge out there in this is that, the Russians and Putin, one, were behind it. But for the sake of this conversation, let's just assume that that's correct. Let's just assume that it was, in fact, the Russians. It wasn't Seth Rich. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that the Russians were behind this. But the accepted point is that they hacked the DNC because, they didn't want Hillary Clinton to win. No. They hacked the DNC because they thought that Hillary was going to win. There's a big distinction there. And what I'm telling you is closer to the truth. But anyway, the entire premise of this hoax, right? That Vladimir Putin was desperate for Donald Trump to win the election. That is that entire premise was never founded on truth. That hoax was never credible because that was the claim. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and this is why we're going to go back in history a little bit. Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration had been the most pro-Putin Democrats in decades. First off, it was the incoming Obama administration back in 2009, right? Wins the election 2008, 2009, he's going to be inaugurated. January 20th, right? It's always when it happens. Well, it was the Obama administration that was coming in that said they were going to, reset, that they were going to improve relations with Russia. So are you scratching your head yet? Were you scratching your head in 2016 when they said, well, Vladimir Putin wants Donald Trump to win? Why would he want Donald Trump to win? It's Obama and Hillary Clinton who he's got dirt on. It's those people that he's, excuse me, I've got adjusting my back here. Okay. So, this is March 6th, 2009. So you've got the new Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, right? She travels over to Geneva to reset relations between the U.S. and Russia, right? This is the big Obama initiative. In other words, what was the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton saying to Vladimir Putin and the Russians? Hey, we know there was tension under the previous Bush administration for 8 years. We know Republicans don't like you guys in Russia. We know those guys don't like communism. But, Obama, I'm a Marxist, baby. I love communism. Hillary Clinton doesn't care. She just cares whoever pays her. So now it's different because we love communism. We love you, Putin. We want to show you that we're different. We are not hostile to Russia. So you remember that moment, Clinton, she's in Geneva. She presents Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov this symbolic, it was very theatrical, right? This symbolic red reset button to symbolize all of this. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was humiliating because the button underneath it in Russian was supposed to say reset on it in Russian. And whoever did the translation for Clinton's team, they got the word wrong. The button had the Russian word that translated to overload or overcharged, not reset. So they botched that from the beginning. Anyway, the next 8 years under Obama were a disaster. Foreign policy-wise, Putin took advantage of Obama every which way. He became more aggressive. Remember, he invaded and annexed Crimea, and Barack Obama was very soft on that. He did not get involved in the conflict, and in fact, he said he wasn't going to get involved in the conflict. So, Putin had never had it so good as he did under Obama and Clinton. But let's talk about Hillary Clinton specifically, because supposedly, right, the premise, Vladimir Putin didn't want Hillary Clinton to win. He was scared of her. Scared of her. Yeah, scared like Seth Rich. He was desperate to defeat Hillary Clinton, right? To help Trump win. Let's start with Uranium One, huh? Can we start there? Anyone remember Uranium One? I'm just going to give a simple short version of this, but remember, we were told, even before all the stuff that came out with Gabbard in 2016, Vladimir Putin wanted Trump to win. He wanted Trump to beat Hillary Clinton. So in 2010, you had the Russian state-owned energy company, Rosatom. It was actually a Russian nuclear agency. And they were seeking to acquire a controlling stake in Uranium One 51%, right? So that'd be a controlling stake. So this was a Canadian mining company that controlled 20% of our American US uranium production. So for obvious reasons, uranium being a national security resource, this deal required approval from the State Department and, the Committee to Foreign Investment in the United States. But this was a group that included 9 federal agencies. One of them, of course, was Clinton and the State Department. And Clinton, do you understand what I'm saying here with Uranium One? So you have the Russians, right? You have Putin, a Putin-controlled energy company that's trying to buy 20% of American, U.S. uranium production. And Russia's supposed to be an enemy. Well, Clinton had a clear conflict of interest with the Uranium One deal. Do you remember why? Because donors who were connected to Uranium One, they had contributed $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. Let me repeat that. Clinton at the State Department is supposed to be one of the people that approves this deal, selling 20% of our uranium production to the Russians through brokering the sale of Uranium One. And people that work for Uranium One who want this deal done, right? They want to make money. They want to sell to the Russians. Well, they have donated $145 million to the Clinton crime family via the Clinton Foundation. And Clinton never disclosed any of this, by the way. Now, at the time of this deal, the FBI, get this, it just keeps, this is amazing stuff. You see, in looking into the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, we are finally revisiting the real colossal epic corruption that exists in this country that was the Clinton family and even the Obamas. Now, at the time of this deal, right, the Russians trying to buy a majority stake in Uranium One, the FBI had evidence of bribery, of kickbacks, and corruption tied to Rosatom, which is the Putin Russian state-owned energy company that's trying to buy our uranium. So Rosatom had this subsidiary company that was called 10X. Vadim Makarin, I don't speak Russian. I don't know. Makarin, make it whatever. Pronounce how you want. Vadim, I know that's right. Makarin. So he was involved in this racketeering scheme that the FBI was investigating. And he ran this subsidiary of Rosatom, 10X, in Maryland, I believe it was. Now, Robert Mueller, this is what's so amazing about this stuff. The names that always come back up, right? The same crooks are always in positions of power. So Robert Mueller, right, who would end up going and conducting the Mueller investigation, $32 million, 2 years of our money into Trump-Russia collusion. Robert Mueller is the FBI director, and he's the one who had built a criminal case starting in 2009 under Obama. So Robert Mueller's actually built a criminal case that exposes the corruption of Rosatom via their subsidiary 10X. He's the one leading the investigation into this Russian who's running the company in the U.S. And he kept this investigation secret. Nobody knew about this. No public action was even taken until 2014, which is 4 years after the Uranium One deal was approved. Now, the FBI knew that Rosatom's objective, now get this, because the FBI had an informant at 10X, which is a subsidiary of Rosatom. So when I talk about 10X, I'm talking about Rosatom. If I'm talking about Rosatom, I'm talking about 10X, just for the sake of making this simple to understand. So the FBI actually knew that Rosatom's objective was to gain control of the global uranium market. The FBI had the informant. His name was William Douglas Campbell. And he's the one who gave the FBI these documents. He gave them recordings. He gave them memos showing the corruption. He told the FBI, this informant, he told Robert Mueller that Russia's goal was to gain influence in the U.S. through nuclear deals, including Uranium One. This is going on. So what did the Obama officials do? What did Hillary Clinton do? What did the FBI do? They all kept this information from Congress. They didn't share this with the other agencies that were supposed to approve the sale of our uranium production to the Russians. They hid the FBI report. It wasn't shared with him. So, in other words, Clinton's State Department approved a dangerous deal that handed Russia control of 20% of our uranium production, America's uranium production, while more than $100 million flowed to her family from people associated with the deal. She didn't disclose the donations. And meanwhile, evidence of corruption, related to Rosatom, that was buried. And just so you understand, Vadim Makarin, who ran the subsidiary of Rosatom in the United States, the Russian, he was arrested in 2014. He pled guilty to money laundering and bribery. All right. And the DOJ made this announcement quietly because there was very little media coverage of this because they didn't want to hurt Clinton. They didn't want to hurt the Obamas. But that's what happened. So it was all real. Now, on top of this, so again, excuse me, Hillary Clinton was effectively the reason that Vladimir Putin gained control of 20% of our uranium production. And he wants Trump to be president, not Hillary Clinton. Get the F out of here. So anyway, on top of all this, on June 29th of 2010, we're in 2010 here, Bill Clinton, I don't know if you remember this story, he was actually invited to the Kremlin. He was invited to Moscow by a Kremlin-linked investment bank, and that bank was called Renaissance Capital. But he was invited to Moscow to give a paid speech, and they paid him $500,000. And at the time that he delivered this speech, Bill Clinton, that is, and at the time that he got the $500,000, Renaissance Capital was actively promoting investment in Uranium One. That's right. So they were trying to broker. So the deal was going on. The Russians are trying to buy our uranium at the same time that the bank in Russia that is trying to raise the capital to get the deal done pays Bill Clinton $500,000 to give a speech. So, I could go on forever. Obviously about Obama himself and how weak he was. Do you remember in Syria, you had Assad's forces use sarin gas on 1,000 plus people that included children? And remember, the Russians are also on the ground in Syria, right? And the Russians are bombing our. Look, I mean, this isn't about your opinion of Syria and our involvement. I'm just making a point to you, okay? The Russians are present in Syria, and they're backing our enemies, right? So we're backing rebels. And the Russians are on the other side of that war, and they're bombing the people that we're backing and putting guns in their hands of. And Obama takes no action. Obama's famous red line comment, hey, Assad, if you move chemical weapons, if you use chemical weapons, that's a red line and things are going to change. My calculus on this situation is going to change, i.e., watch out. And the very next day, Assad killed 1,000 plus people with chemical weapons. And Barack Obama then had the Russians negotiate a deal on our behalf. So now, before we continue on this journey together into the most scandalous and criminal behavior ever engaged in by an administration in our country's history, can I just interject for a second? Do the Trump weave for a moment. Imagine that George Washington is president of the United States. And, I don't know, Thomas Jefferson, his contemporaries who, let's say they were hungry for power themselves. And they went to our enemies in France, and they went to our enemies in the UK, and they worked with whatever the, intel agency would be at the time. Obviously, it's a different time. It's not exactly a perfect analogy. And they accused, George Washington of working with, the French to, undermine our country or to, it's treasonous. I'll come up with a better analogy, but I think you get the point. If you put someone else in there and you think about like, what did Obama and Clinton actually do? Like they and this is the point. They didn't just use our intel agencies to create this hoax. They actually worked with foreign intelligence operations to carry this out. But I've got to remind you about Benghazi. Do you realize that if Benghazi hadn't happened, we probably wouldn't have had the Trump-Russia collusion hoax? Because it was in the Benghazi investigations, right? Because Hillary Clinton and her State Department failed to deliver resources to protect our Americans at the embassy. They didn't take the threat seriously. And the whole reason, it became a scandal is the Clinton and the State Department were trying to cover up the fact that they were responsible for these deaths because they didn't heed the warnings of the ambassador and of the security forces there that for a month were saying, hey, it's a dangerous situation. It's volatile here. There's more and more armed militias they're forming here. We don't feel safe. And they didn't take the threat seriously. And obviously we know what happened. Ambassador Stevens died. Other special forces, I think 4 people died there. And then you had Hillary Clinton blame it on, some random video somebody posted mocking Muhammad. And the reason they did that, I don't think people understand this about Benghazi. I didn't understand this until I was doing the research, by the way. I really never understood the like nuts and bolts of the Benghazi scandal. I didn't really understand. Like, I thought the video that Obama went out and, all these people were saying, oh yeah, it was a video. Like, why were they blaming it on a video? Why did they put this person in prison over this video that obviously they were lying? It had nothing to do with Benghazi. It was not, and this is why. Because the use of the video was to claim that this was happened all of a sudden. There was a spontaneous event. And the reason the State Department and Clinton and Obama wanted you to believe that what happened in Benghazi was a spontaneous event is because it absolved them of their role in not planning. If it was spontaneous, how could Hillary Clinton have known that they needed additional security in Benghazi, right? If it was spontaneous and nobody saw it coming, then Hillary Clinton couldn't have failed to send more people and to secure our Americans that were stationed there because nobody could have known. That's why they did the video. I felt like a genius when I finally figured it out like 2 days ago. Maybe some of you already knew that, but I'm 38 now. I was a little bit younger back then when it happened. And my political acumen has raised since then, paying attention to things like many of yours, I'm sure too. But anyway, so that's the deal. That's why they blamed on the video, because you looked at the emails with Hillary Clinton and she was told about this and she didn't take action. So she is directly responsible for the deaths of all these people in Benghazi. It was totally irresponsible. It was a total failure on behalf of the State Department and Hillary Clinton. And when that was investigated, that's when we discovered that she used a personal email and a private server. This is another thing that I think is somewhat confusing to people at times. I have a Gmail account, right? So I use a private server because it's attached to my Gmail account. That's what facilitates the email exchange. So that's all we're talking about with the server. All right. She's using a personal email address. It's not protected by the State Department. Hillary Clinton used her personal email address. She never used a State Department, never used a government address, even in her role as the head of the State Department. She used a personal email address to conduct all of her correspondence. Think about that for a second. And we know why she did that. Because if you use a government email address, you're required to store those emails. That's government property, so they can see into what you're doing. And so, she decided to just use a personal email address for everything. And it was out of the Benghazi investigation that we learned that she was doing this, that we learned that she was using this personal email address, that we learned that she was sending classified information. That's what sparked all this. And this is the situation Hillary Clinton found herself in January of 2016. the email scandal was not relenting. She was still under a microscope. She was still humiliated. The FBI was investigating her emails. James Comey was investigating her emails. She is embroiled in a massive, massive scandal as she is competing with Bernie Sanders to win the nomination for president, for Democrat presidential candidate in 2016. You have to understand the context of all of this, of what is going on. Now look, the way this DNC hack that took place was framed, that's what we have to look at, right? This is the beginning of 2016 as well. And bear with me as I give you a couple dates. I might have to bounce around for a second, but most people are really familiar with a John Podesta, right? He was the campaign manager at the time with a John Podesta hack. Now, supposedly, the way this story was given to us by the media, and there's a reason I'm going to keep bringing up what we've been told, because I want to question everything in just a few minutes. But it was supposedly March 19th, 2016, when Podesta received an email that looked like a Google security alert. You know the type of email. Someone has tried to access your account, change your password immediately by clicking here. And I think there might even be email correspondence, but somebody in the Clinton campaign or at the DNC told Podesta to go ahead and click on it, and he clicked on it. And it was a malicious link that sent him to a fake Google login page, and he put in his credentials, and that's how they accessed his emails. Now, I don't know how relevant that it will be later on, but just keep that in mind. This is happening in April. So, that was March, right? March 19th. So the Democrat National Committee hired CrowdStrike in April. The end of April, actually, was April 30th to look into it and protect the system. So basically, at the end of April, the DNC says, hey, we've got a problem. We're being hacked. But, I don't understand how you go from March 19th with this, phishing attempt that's successful with Podesta. It then takes you over a month to hire somebody to look into it. I mean, that's just kind of odd to me. I mean, aren't those questions that you are curious about? Anyway, CrowdStrike ultimately said it was the Russians. It was the Russians. That's what they concluded at the end of their investigative work. And the DNC waited until mid-June to tell everyone what had happened. So they knew in May at the latest that, I think, CrowdStrike, I've got some information from them too, because they put out statements on this too. But the Democrats waited until mid-June to let everyone know that they'd been hacked. And it wasn't presented as a big deal at first, by the way. One of the things I did as I was looking into all this is I went back and I looked at what the media was saying at the time, week by week. And so you've got, the Washington Post, I believe, broke the story that the DNC had been hacked. And that was on June 14th, 2016. And here are a couple points from that article. Russia hacking was nothing new. It was routine. It was well known. Everyone knows that the Russians do this. So it wasn't particularly, revelatory. And I've got some pull quotes from Politico, who wrote about it at the time. And Politico said, just a couple of things here. Russian hackers have long served as a major digital foil for the Obama administration. Last August, Defense Department officials blamed Moscow for orchestrating a successful cyber attack on the Pentagon Joint Chiefs unclassified email system. The incident came just months after Defense Secretary Ash Carter acknowledged Russian hackers had broken into the DoD's unclassified networks. So they're admitting now, without really intending to, that the Russians have been targeting the Obama administration for a long time. Last August of 2015, the Putin targeted the Pentagon Joint Chiefs unclassified email system. And we're going to jump in just a moment to Donald Trump is working with Putin to hack and steal and interfere in the election. Donald Trump, nobody knew that Donald Trump was going to be the Republican candidate for president in August of 2015 when this hacking was going on. So why is Russia trying to hack into the Pentagon? Did Trump have him do that too? Do you understand what I'm getting at? You have to turn off your brain completely to buy the stupidity of these individuals like Dara O'Rourke, I can see on the screen. Load of bollocks. Tulsi is as mad as a box of frogs. I don't know why Dara's even watching. I mean, she could learn something. But, this is the type of person the Democrats rely upon to perpetuate their hoaxes, people that don't have brains like Dara O'Rourke. Hi, Dara. So in this Politico article, another just pull quote, Michael McFaul, who served as U.S. ambassador to Russia from 2012 to 2014, called the hack meddling in our personal affairs. I am sure they intended to do this without being caught, he told Politico. They wanted to obtain the information without it being detected. That's a kind of target that would make sense in terms of them wanting to know things about what is going on here. Whether they were doing it to try to manipulate our political process, I'd have to think about that. So this is the reporting throughout June. Now, the email scandal is still going on with Hillary Clinton. And now we get to, there are a few critical moments in this timeline. And we're about to hit one. June 27th, 2016. Bill Clinton meets with the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, on the tarmac. I forget what city they were in, if it was Phoenix or wherever. But you remember this story? I mean, I won't go down, the rabbit hole, but, Christopher Sine, who worked for ABC, he's the one who broke the story. And of course, he was found dead years later. But they were supposed to be meeting in secret. And this guy saw them on the tarmac. He saw Loretta Lynch, going into the plane, meeting with Bill Clinton. This is weird. They just happen to be here crossing paths and they're having this private meeting. Well, what were they meeting about? Because Hillary Clinton was being briefed all along about given updates by the FBI on her investigation. Hillary Clinton was working with the Obama administration and Loretta Lynch, who ran the AG, she's the Attorney General, to figure out how she's going to get out of this unscathed. Because it's unfortunate that the year that she finally gets a shot at, actually winning the, Democrat nomination and becoming president, her dreams of power fulfilled, well, she's got the email scandal to deal with. And this is why later on, one of the things that Putin allegedly, from Tulsi Gabbard's report, what we just saw, that they held back, that they didn't even release via WikiLeaks or anything else, was that Hillary Clinton throughout this entire year was loaded up on tranquilizers. She was a mental wreck. She was a lunatic. And this corroborates something. She doesn't do she doesn't meet with the press. She doesn't meet with news outlets for like 245 days, not until September of 2016. But for over 200, she's like Joe Biden before there was Joe Biden. So anyway, remember that. So AG Lynch obviously meets with Bill Clinton to let him know, wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, I just want to let you know, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to handle it. So a few days later on July 5th, James Comey gives that infamous press conference in which he exonerates Hillary Clinton in the FBI investigation into a classified email scandal. And he effectively says, if it weren't Hillary Clinton, she'd probably be prosecuted. But, it's Hillary Clinton, so we're not going to. He said that in his little press conference. So, he says we're not going to recommend charges. We can't prove intent. And this is 3 weeks before the Democrat National Convention. And this was timed on purpose to help Hillary Clinton, to help her get out from under a bad PR scandal and actual real scandal. And it's important to note something here. It's very, very bizarre that James Comey delivered this information because he's the FBI director. He's not the attorney general. Loretta Lynch should have given this press conference, but she did not. And it's obvious why. And James Comey later, when he was doing a press tour for his book, I know he lies about a lot, but on this, he said that's why he delivered the verdict, that Lynch was going to make it worse. They didn't want to draw attention to this tarmac meeting. They don't want to. They're trying to get Hillary Clinton away from scandals. So they don't want people so James Comey does it, right? And the media doesn't care, they comply and all that. Now, July is when WikiLeaks leaks the first batch of emails. And this is just before the Democrat National Convention in Philadelphia. And it was on July 22nd, they released 19,000 emails. 19,000 emails are leaked. And the Washington Post said, the emails from the Democratic National Committee include discussions of Clinton's chief rival for the presidential nomination, Senator Bernie Sanders, details of perks provided to party donors attending the convention, and email exchanges between party officials, journalists, and others. And look, we don't need to get into the specifics of all that. It doesn't matter. But, the emails that came out in that first tranche ahead of the convention, they highlighted the tension in the DNC, right? They highlighted the fact that, Clinton and the DNC were effectively conspiring against Bernie Sanders to make sure that she got the nomination and he didn't, that they were biased against Bernie Sanders. And this was obviously embarrassing for Clinton. It was embarrassing for Democrats. But a couple days later, think about this. You're Hillary Clinton. Your biggest problem is the fact that you've got this giant email scandal. And you're just, for a year, you've been bogged down on this. You finally, coordinate with the FBI and Lynch. She meets with Bill Clinton. Comey exonerates you. And you go up there, you're about to accept the nomination. And now you've got this, drop of emails that suggests that shows how, you effectively, cheated to steal the nomination. So she finds herself in damage control yet again. But the Clintons, the Clinton campaign, Obama, the media, they decided on a new narrative this time, right? So before it was, hey, this happens, the Russians have been, hacking us forever, and also the initial reporting of the emails. Is this it? Okay, look at this. So this is from June 14th, 2016. This is what I'm talking about. The first reveal by the DNC about this hack. Russian government hackers penetrated the computer network of the Democratic National Committee and gained access to the entire database of opposition research. And this is the point. There was no suggestion that Trump was behind it. There was no suggestion that Putin was trying to help Trump. In fact, they were telling people that they got the files on Trump, potentially, on the opposition research that the Democrats had gotten a hold of. And by the way, can I make a suggestion to you? Because what we're going to talk about is going to blow everyone's mind, including mine. The Clinton campaign had already been illegally using campaign funds to fund the Steele dossier by this time. We didn't get the contents of the Steele dossier until January of 2017. But Steele started getting this stuff in June or July. So they were already working on this. The Clinton campaign had already reached out to Fusion GPS months earlier to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. It was worse than that. It was very specific what they wanted to do. And we'll get into the reigning conspiracy theory I'll introduce you to, a conspiracy theory that may very well be true, but it's something that should be out there and that you should be putting out there because we need answers. But it's interesting because that's the narrative. Well, they were trying to gain opposition research. Well, the Democrats were conducting opposition research on Trump. They were paying for a Steele dossier at the time. So, one of the explanations, if that's true, is that the Democrat, look, and think about this too. Trump wasn't a traditional campaign. It wasn't centralized. He was an outsider. you couldn't hack Trump in the same way you could hack the DNC. I mean, the DNC was just, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, they didn't seem to make any changes, even though they knew they were being hacked. And I'll get into that in a minute, for a long time, because the hacking started long before, even in January. And so could the Russians have been digging around looking for their research on Donald Trump? I mean, obviously for the Russians, I mean, and one of the things that Tulsi Gabbard's report pointed out is that there was information to go anyway, either way. In fact, there was more information that the Democrats wanted Hillary Clinton to win. There was more information that the Russians wanted Hillary Clinton to win. But they want research on whoever the Russians do. So this is key. Something changes in these 2 days. So before, the narrative is the Russians hacked us and they stole opposition research. No mention of Trump. No mention of Putin's intentions or motivation. No one speculated on a motive. Now, all of a sudden, July 24th is here. The DNC, the convention's taking place. Hillary Clinton's going to accept the nomination. And these WikiLeaks emails come out. And Obama is the one who introduces the idea that Putin and Trump have some relationship. He does an interview with Savannah Guthrie, and he says, what we do know is the Russians hack our systems, not just government systems, but private systems, he said, Obama. But what the motives were in terms of the leaks and all that, I can't say directly. But what I do know is that Donald Trump has repeatedly expressed admiration for Vladimir Putin. Asked if the president was suggesting that Putin is motivated to prefer Trump in the White House, Mr. Obama said, I am basing this on what Mr. Trump himself has said. And I think that Trump's gotten pretty favorable coverage back in Russia. Now, I don't know if what I'm going to say now is true or not. I mean, I don't know the motivation. I tried to find the clip. I mean, this interview happened with Savannah Guthrie. It was the she worked for the Today Show. But if you do a search for this interview in 2016, July of 2016, it can't be found. It's not available on the Today Show. It's not available on NBC anymore. It says something like, I don't know. Go and look for this video. Savannah Guthrie, Barack Obama ahead of the Democrat National Convention, July 2016. And you will not find that video on NBC sites. And my question is, okay, is it just coincidental? Is it just been too long and this is a common practice to erase this stuff from your website? Or is NBC scrubbing this because of what's going on right now with Obama and him being in hot water? I don't know. Now, I've got one clip and one clip only to play, and that is Robert Mook, who was now the campaign manager for the Clinton campaign. Obama's gone out and introduced this idea. Well, I think Putin might want Trump to win, and that's why this is happening. Now, look at Robbie Mook. Listen to him.
What's disturbing to us is that experts are telling us that Russian state actors broke into the DNC, stole these emails, and other experts are now saying that the Russians are releasing these emails for the purpose of actually helping Donald Trump. I don't think it's coincidental that these emails were released on the eve of our convention here.
There you have it. The narrative changes again. Now Robert Mook and the campaign are officially saying, intelligence, we believe that Putin is actually doing this now to help Donald Trump. So that's Mook. And Vanity Fair uses the interview. They quote the Robert Mook there, and look at this headline. Comrade Trump's alleged Russian ties. So now Trump has Russian ties. Obama comes out. And remember Obama being first, because I'm going to come back to that moment in a second. Because look, there are layers to what's happening here. There are layers that I'm about to peel back, and our minds are going to explode. Our brains are going to explode. And I hope that Gabbard and the rest of the intelligence community and Trump will ask these questions. We'll start to look at this deeper, because this began long before Barack Obama took over and used it as a weapon to try and undermine Trump's first administration. I care as much about Hillary Clinton's role in this as Barack Obama's. I care maybe even more about what took place before Trump became president than after. Certainly as much. And I don't want people to miss this. So that's the narrative from there. And it just gets more and more desperate the closer you get to election day. So it's not that Russians hacked the DNC. It's not even that Putin is interfering in our elections anymore. Now it's that Trump is working with Putin to accomplish it. Trump is somehow directing this. Now here's another critical, I only said it 3 times, piece of information. We learned this years ago, but all this matters. July 26th, 2016. So Obama's out there, and he's giving his interview with Savannah Guthrie, right? He's telling her that Putin and Trump may have a thing going here to try and, hurt Hillary Clinton. They're working together. You have Robbie Mook from the campaign come out and finally make a statement applying intent to Putin. And July 26, 2016, conventions happening. CIA director at the time, John Brennan, he briefs President Barack Obama on the Hillary Clinton campaign's plan to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming election interference, i.e. Trump-Russia collusion, is born. We have Brennan's handwritten notes. That's where this comes from. And John Ratcliffe is the one FBI director later that declassified this. John Brennan's notes said, "We're getting additional insight into Russian activities from redacted CITE, C-I-T-E, alleged, approved by Hillary Clinton, a proposal from one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by the Russian Security Service," which is the GRU. And you're going to see the GRU come up time and time again after this. The narrative, you see what the Democrats do? The notes state on 28th of July, in the margin, Brennan writes POTUS, but that section of the notes is redacted. By the way, I don't know if the unredacted's out there, but I would like to know. It should be redacted. Hello? And the notes read, "Any evidence of collaboration between the Trump campaign plus Russia." So now they're desperately searching to create evidence to sell this narrative to the American people. They have another scandal they're trying to deal with, and it's embarrassing for them, and they're trying to turn this against Trump. So September 2016, Hillary Clinton goes out, gives a campaign event. She's in Illinois, I believe. And she cites credible reports of Russian interference in U.S. elections. She says, "I think it's quite intriguing that this activity has happened around the time Trump became the nominee. And it's been 275 days since she's since she's sat in front of the press. And now all of a sudden she can't wait to get in front of the press. Now she's got to be in front of the press 24/7 pushing this narrative." Quick timeline, folks. The Democrats, now we know, they need to prove something else. They're claiming that Trump is involved in all this, so they need to tie Trump to Putin. That's key. This falls apart without it. July 31st, 2016. The FBI opened its investigation of possible Trump-Russia collusion. 5 days, by the way, after Clinton allegedly hatched the plan. And if you remember the name George Papadopoulos, he's about to become relevant too, because this is the layer of the onion I'm going to peel back for you. Now let's get into some stuff here. Things that a lot of people didn't know, things that I didn't know and certainly didn't remember. September of 2016. Michael Sussman, right? Michael Sussman, he's a lawyer that works for the Clinton campaign. He works for Perkins Coie. Perkins Coie is where Mark Elias worked, right? Mark Elias, the fat Jabba the Hutt doppelganger that thinks he's going to get away with his crimes, but we're coming for you too, fat boy. Michael Sussman goes to the FBI September 2016. I told you he's a lawyer working for the Clinton campaign at Perkins Coie. And he tells the FBI person he's meeting with, hey, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for meeting me today. I am not here on behalf of the Clinton campaign. My God, that would be crazy. That would actually even be illegal. I am here as a concerned private citizen. And, I just happen to have these white papers, these research papers in front of me that are from this, this group of geeks. I don't know. Don't ask how it came in my hand, but I'm just telling you, I've got these white papers, and in this research I've just obtained, well, it shows unusual DNS traffic between a Trump organization domain and the largest bank in Russia called Alpha Bank. And these cyber geeks, they think it's worth looking into. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Take a look. Sussman lied to the FBI. He was working for the Clinton campaign. He was delivering that on behalf of the Clinton campaign, and the FBI had to have known all about it. As a matter of fact, Robbie Mook testified later because Sussman was part of the Durham investigation, and he should have gone to jail, but he got off because, these crooks always get off. But Robbie Mook actually testified, the campaign manager, he testified that the Clinton campaign had paid for and commissioned the analysis, these white papers. Ooh, DNS signals, spooky, what's going on? Well, they paid somebody to come up with that, and they were paying Sussman. And this was campaign-funded opposition research, which, of course, is a violation of campaign finance law. And the FBI, by the way, looked into this later, these white papers, these allegations, and they found the allegation was completely fabricated. In other words, just like the Steele dossier, the Clinton campaign paid a bunch of people to come up with something to make it up completely out of whole cloth. There was no covert communication between the Trump campaign and Alpha Bank. Clinton paid these people to do it, to make it look like there was something going on, and there was nothing going on whatsoever. And by the way, what would that prove anyway? Have you ever asked a Democrat, by the way, what is Trump-Russia collusion? Well, Trump, he colluded with Putin to, really? Like how? What exactly did he do? Nobody can explain it. Nobody could explain it on the news. It was Trump-Russia collusion. And you have to wonder, what the level of collaboration was between the Clinton campaign, obviously, and the Obama administration. This couldn't have been done without the Obama administration. So everyone's pointing to December, whatever, this moment in which things change and Obama gets involved. Obama's involved the whole time. Obama was briefed about this, in July by James Brennan. He knows what's going on. This couldn't be possible without him. This is why I'm focused on pre-Trump victory, because everyone else is focused on post-Trump victory, which is also important. And I will focus on that next episode. Anyway, the story about the Alpha Bank, the spooky, creepy, suspect communication between the Trump org and, the Russian bank. Well, that story was given to Slate in October 31st, 2016, right? Late October surprise, desperate Hillary Clinton, was a Trump server communicating with Russia. So Slate was a part of that. The Clinton campaign fed that story to Slate as well. Now, here we go. Let's get into the Steele dossier. Things that you didn't know, things that I didn't know. Maybe some of you knew, but I doubt it. So it's October 2016. The election's in November. And the Obama administration starts spying on Carter Page. Carter Page, he's just a Trump campaign advisor, all right? And the Obama administration is using the Clinton campaign-funded Steele dossier to justify this. The FBI uses the Steele dossier in their FISA application to spy on Carter Page. And the FBI did not disclose to the judge who approved the FISA warrant. They did not disclose that Steele was biased against Trump, and they didn't disclose that the Steele dossier was paid by the Clinton administration. So the Democrats are doing this, and it's all illegal. Obama's involved. It's all illegal. The FBI, all illegal. Now, When do you think Steele started putting this dossier together? June. George Papadopoulos. Let's take a break and talk about George Papadopoulos for a minute. I'll get to the kind of conclusions in just a moment here. It won't conclude permanently, but it will set us up for the next time I sit here and we keep going with this. I think this is very, very important. We cannot let this go. We need to remember this and we need to research this. So George Papadopoulos, something is off about this to me. I am laser focused on George Papadopoulos because something stinks to high heaven and I want an answer. So Papadopoulos is a nobody. And I don't mean that as an insult to George. I just mean it's 2016. He's going to be a foreign policy advisor for the Trump campaign. Trump announces it himself in an interview on March 21st. But he's a low-level person in the Trump campaign. George is. George lives in London. Papadopoulos lives in London. And he works at this organization. It's a think tank of sorts, I believe. But it's called the London Center of International Law Practice. This is March 2016. We're going back in time now, right? So this think tank he's working for, they send him to this conference in Rome for work. It's a delegation, and they hold these meetings at Link, which I think is a university in Rome, but nonetheless, it's in Rome. It's called Link. This is March 12th, and he already knows he's going to be working for the Trump administration, even though Trump makes the announcement officially on the 21st. He knows by this time. And in Rome at Link, the Rome institution there where this meeting is taking place, he meets a guy named Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud. Mifsud lives in London. He's a professor there, I believe. And he has a senior role at this same think tank that Papadopoulos is working for. And he and Papadopoulos hit it off in Rome. So they hang out a few times when they get back to London. Mifsud meets Papadopoulos, and he lets Papadopoulos, Mifsud wants Papadopoulos to know that he's a big deal in Russia. They meet this one day, and Mifsud shows up with this young girl, and he tells Papadopoulos that the girl is Vladimir Putin's niece. She wasn't the niece. It was a lie. Why would he do that? It's not true. That wasn't Vladimir Putin's niece, but Mifsud tells Papadopoulos that, whoa, look, this is... So he's like grooming, and not in the sexual way, but he's like grooming Papadopoulos for something. So hey, this is Putin's. Ooh, that's cool. Wow, this guy like knows people. I'm a foreign policy advisor to Donald Trump. Like I'm big time. Like I've hit like the jackpot here. I'm going to be useful to the Trump administration. Like these connections I'm making. Doesn't it feel like a scam to you? Like whatever. So they get breakfast another morning, and then on April 26th, right? April 26th, Mifsud tells Papadopoulos, "Hey, you know what, Georgie boy? I hear the Russians have dirt on Hillary Clinton, just out of the blue. They've got emails. Isn't that crazy? Wink, wink, Papadopoulos." And 6 days later, Papadopoulos meets Alexander Downer. This is key. He meets a guy named Alexander Downer at a wine bar in Kensington. Kensington, if you've ever been to London or if you haven't been to London, Kensington is a very ritzy, very wealthy part of London. And so they meet at the Kensington wine rooms, no doubt a bougie place. Alexander Downer is Australia's former high commissioner. Alexander Downer works for Australian intelligence. That's the point. And they're sitting there drinking, and Papadopoulos tells Downer that this guy has told him that the Russians have dirt on Hillary Clinton. And they go home, and he doesn't see Downer anymore, and that's the end. Downer supposedly tells the Australian intel community about Papadopoulos. And the Australian government doesn't take any action whatsoever. Not yet. Just waits. The coincidences, right? We talk about coincidences. What are the odds some of these things happen and who's actually behind them? Clinton? Maybe. All right. So look, Democrats know they've been hacked in March potentially. End of April, they hire CrowdStrike. Now, listen carefully to this. This is what CrowdStrike said about their involvement. CrowdStrike, if you're just joining me, was hired by the Clinton campaign to look into the hack that took place and to identify who was behind it, and they determined it was the Russians. So the DNC contacted CrowdStrike to respond to a suspected cyber attack impacting its network. The DNC was first alerted to the hack by the FBI in September 2015, according to testimony by DNC IT contractor Yared Tamim, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the FBI attributed the breach to the Russian government in September. Are you asking some of the questions I'm asking here? But I thought it's June when the Democrats tell us they've been hacked by the Russians. But wait a second. The FBI knows the Russians hacked the DNC in September 2015. Excuse me? So the DNC knows in September 2015 the Russians have hacked him. That's what the FBI told them. Donald Trump is not the presidential candidate yet. People didn't know that Trump was going to be the nominee for the Republican Party until February. February, we knew it. March, Super Tuesday, he won 7 out of 10 states. March, it was like a foregone conclusion. Trump's going to be the guy. But September 2015, nobody knew Trump had a chance of becoming president. And the FBI tells the DNC you've been hacked by the Russians. They hire CrowdStrike in April 30th. What's going on here? Just asking questions. So in April 2016, some guy decides to tell Papadopoulos that the Russians have dirt on Clinton. What are the odds of that happening? And then Papadopoulos tells someone who happens to work for Australian intelligence at a wine bar about 6 days later on May 6th that this happened. And this Australian tells his government and they sit on it until July. Why do they sit on it until July? We're coming back to it. The same day, are you ready for this? Coincidence. On the same day that Brennan told Obama about Hillary Clinton's plan to invent this scandal, create this scandal that tied Trump to Putin, on the same day that he briefed Obama, that's the same day that that's the same day that the Australian government contacted Brennan, the FBI, and said, hey, did you hear about this Papadopoulos meeting? And that's what they used to open an FBI investigation into the Trump-Russia collusion. You know what I think? I think that the Clinton campaign hatched this Trump-Russia collusion bullshit, pardon my French, way earlier than they know and we've assumed. If they knew the Russians were behind the hack, and they knew they were compromised, and they knew there was a possibility emails would be leaked, then they may have decided they needed a contingency to deal with that. And when they knew Trump would be the opponent, well, let's set George Papadopoulos up. Let's get ready. How do we save ourselves from humiliation? Let's tie it to Trump. He's behind this. And so you can see the escalation of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. But there are all of these things that are contradictory in what the media's reported and what we know. The DNC was aware of hacks in September of 2015. They knew they were under attack. And then they wait until April to hire CrowdStrike to determine. I mean, I guess you understand the point here. I mean, based on this testimony, they knew that Russians were trying to hack them in September of 2015. So why is it a surprise, 5 months later that the Russians have hacked you? They've been trying to hack you. And so these are the questions we need to get to the bottom of. Obviously, Trump wasn't working with Putin. And that brings me to the Russiagate Explained. Other people are talking about this. I don't want to spend too long because we have already hit an hour here, over an hour. But, the Obama intelligence that happens post, Trump winning, it was equivalent to the Steele dossier. Obama told the intelligence community, a handful of people, Brennan and so on and so forth, hey, we need to make sure that we tie Donald Trump to Putin. We need to make sure that this assessment concludes that, Putin was working to elect Donald Trump. And that's why they used a small snippet of information that was interpreted 5 different ways by 5 different people as the foundation of their claim. And in this report that I encourage you to read, it's about 45 pages from Tulsi Gabbard. It shows all the information and intel that was gathered. And there's way more evidence that Putin wanted Clinton to win over Trump. There's no direct evidence that says, Putin definitely wants, Trump to win. And it doesn't make sense anyway because of the way I opened the show. Why would Putin want Trump to win when, Hillary Clinton was already compromised? When he already had dirt on her, when she had the Clinton Foundation, when she helped with Uranium One, all these scandals out there. Why? So the question that we need to ask is, how early was the Trump-Russia collusion hoax hatched? When was it actually hatched? What was Obama's role in it? I mean, we have some key moments we can point to. We can see the media's changing narrative, and it's not until, July that we start to get this change in the narrative. It escalates. And remember this too. Think about some context. The belief going into the election was that Hillary Clinton was going to win. You had a pollster that was heralded as like the greatest pollster of all time that worked out of Princeton. I don't remember his name. He was saying there was a 99% chance that Clinton was going to win. But regardless, whether it was Nate Silver, every single supposedly reputable pollster said Hillary Clinton's going to win this election. And I don't know if they were just telling themselves that because, of course, they wanted to believe that. But nonetheless, the accepted belief on the left was that Hillary Clinton was going to win. Obama was out there saying there is no way. I mean, the whole way, there is no way Trump's going to be elected because I trust the American people. President's hard work. What would Trump know about that? Me, Barack Obama, lazy OG, DEI hire everywhere I go. Yeah, I work hard. So, these are the questions I have, but that needs to be investigated as well. I mean, I guess it seems to me, if you look at the timelines, the Steele dossier, which was intended to do this, happened earlier than some of these meetings. Let me see if I put this down real quick, and then I'll close. The main thing to me is the Steele dossier, because I did not realize it started so early. Fusion GPS. Hang with me for 1 second. I'm going to pull up my computer and look it up on my notes. But I'm coming. I'm coming. Almost there. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to repeat. The Clinton campaign started their oppositional research of Trump in April of 2016. They hired Fusion GPS in April of 2016. Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele in June of 2016. They spent $12.4 million on this. And they hid the funding because it was a campaign finance violation. So my point is, the Clinton campaign was focused on tying Trump to Russia, ostensibly, believably, credibly, in April of 2016. They went to Fusion GPS in April of 2016 and gave them a directive to invent this dossier. And they ultimately had Steele do it in June. That's before WikiLeaks leaked anything. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? How is it that the Clinton campaign had the foresight to go and hire Steele in June when WikiLeaks hadn't even leaked anything yet? They're going about this in April. And this is when Papadopoulos is set up. This is when all this is going on. So my point is, I think these mother effers knew as early as 2015 what was going on. And once they realized that Trump was going to be the nominee, they went ahead and did this. I don't know that it has anything to do as a reaction necessarily to WikiLeaks. It's possible this was a plan that had nothing to do with that. Because the only thing she was dealing with in April when they went to Fusion GPS and said, get us some crap on Trump ASAP, is the email scandal. She's dealing with an email scandal. She'd not been exonerated yet. Bill Clinton had not met with AG Loretta Lynch on the tarmac yet. So this is happening well before this narrative. And so what I'm saying is maybe this plan to hatch to do the Trump-Russia collusion, maybe it was related to the email scandal, her email scandal, not the leaks, but it was her attempt at that time, not knowing exactly what was going to happen, to distract people from the email scandal. So Trump-Russia collusion was maybe born before all of this stuff happened. And maybe it was more orchestrated than people want to believe. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, that's all for today. We'll get into the rest of this next episode. I want people to understand the severity of what happened here. The seditious treason. I want to get into Obama and what the media is doing. They're gaslighting the American people now. And I want to explain and contextualize how serious this is, why this matters, why people have to pay for what they did. All right, this is Drew Allen. God bless you all. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
right, welcome back to Granite State Live. We are live in studio with my buddy Andy from Citizens Doge. Again, the phone lines are working tonight at 833-603-TALK. That's 833-603-8255. All right, so you can call in. Up next, we're going to be talking, we're going to get into a serious topic, right? So we see everything that's been happening with Jeffrey Epstein around, and we see that the Trump administration has basically said they went from, we're going to give you the files, and here's a bunch of influencers who are going to have the inside track on stuff, right? You know, a bunch of redacted nothings. And this has been hyped up for years, right? And I'm going to be honest, it didn't have to go this way. Had Trump not made it a campaign promise, this would have stayed in the bowels of conspiracy theory land. Okay? And yes, it would have still been getting talked about, but he wouldn't be getting any blame for it, or any specific blame for it, had he not flat out said, I'm going to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. And then we get told that there is no list, despite being told that there was a list, and that Pam Bondi had the list and was going to provide the list. Now we get told there is no list. Apparently Jeffrey Epstein had no list of clients, unlike any criminal mastermind that we've ever heard of. Like, you mean a drug dealer doesn't have clients? A human trafficker doesn't have clients? Who are they human trafficking to? Nobody? Hopes and dreams? So we see all this stuff, and you see a lot of the rhetoric online, right? You see a lot of the grifters, you see a lot of the people making a big deal out of it. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be made a big deal out of it. But what I am saying is, lost in the sauce is the level of nuance and truth that we should be aiming towards going into this next segment. And here to discuss it is Daniel Greenfield. He's a conservative columnist and investigative journalist who is a Shillman journalism fellow at Front Page Magazine and executive vice president of programs at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Thank you for coming on the show. So, rumor has it, sir, that you broke this story about Jeffrey Epstein far before the grifters and the pundits and influencers got a hold of it.
No, I didn't break the story, but I have been covering it for about 10 years. This is before a lot of people had that much interest in it, because really the story got a lot of people excited once you actually had Jeffrey Epstein arrested for the second time, and then of course his so-called suicide took place. Before that, there was not all that much interest in it back in 2008, 2009, when you really had the outrageous stuff going on, and before that there was not that much public interest in it.
Why do you think that there wasn't that much public interest? Was it just that it wasn't spicy enough, or it wasn't linked to enough people to get people to pay attention?
It wasn't being weaponized. One of the big things that happened that actually weaponized the story in the first place was, what actually caused Epstein to be arrested a second time. What caused the whole thing to happen? Well, Alex Acosta became a Trump nominee. He was the former federal prosecutor who had handled the Epstein case, and he blew the federal case against Epstein. And the Democrats and the media became very interested in the Epstein case all of a sudden after ignoring it all this time. But there had been an important prerequisite, which is that Hillary Clinton had lost the presidential election. Before Hillary Clinton lost, Epstein could not be talked about because Epstein had close connections to the Clintons. Beyond, obviously, the whole Alita Express thing, Epstein claimed to have helped co-create the Clinton Foundation, or the Clinton Global Initiative, which later becomes the Clinton Foundation. Now, whether or not you believe him or not, and Epstein told a lot of, to exaggerate, it was clear that he had some connections. He was very big in the nonprofit sector. He was good at getting guys like Bill Gates and others connected to financial institutions and to nonprofit funding. So certainly he had some level of involvement. And once the Clintons stopped being on the horizon, the Democrats felt much more comfortable talking about Epstein. And that's really the first time the story became very big.
So when the Democrats decided to all of a sudden pay attention to this, and of course it was initially because, Trump had ties to Epstein back in the 90s, up until the early 2000s, prior to him banning Epstein from Mar-a-Lago for, inappropriate contact with a minor who happened to be one of the guests at Mar-a-Lago. And of course, they wanted to tie it to Trump and tie it to Trump must be on this gigantic list of international pedophiles and all this stuff. And then it became this political football. But what are we missing throughout all of this? Like, where's the truth and where should people be focusing? Because I see a lot of there has got to be there, but what is there?
Well, the big question really is not just what was Epstein doing; it was who was protecting him, and that couldn't have been Trump because he was not a elected official until the end of Epstein's career. But in this Epstein's when the first time Epstein was arrested and he goes to prison in 2008, he doesn't just go to prison. He gets a private wing in the Palm Beach stockade. He doesn't just get a private wing. He gets a private wing with doors that are open. It's a great benefit when you actually are in a prison and the doors just open. The doors just let you walk in and out. He gets to hire sheriff's deputies in Palm Beach as his private security. He pays them. They call him his client. As far as client lists go, he gets to do workaways in his beachfront mansion, again while serving time for abusing underage girls. So this is crazy, and it gets crazier because then he gets out of prison. Florida refuses to list him as a sex offender. New York, Manhattan DA goes ahead and actually takes him down 2 notches as a sex offender from level 3 to level 1 against the recommendations of the judge and the relevant board. New Mexico takes him off the sex offender list 2 days after he gets put on it. He has a big ranch there called the Zorro Ranch. So you have prosecutors in 3 states, enforcement officials in 3 states intervening to protect Epstein. So that's not on Trump. That's not something Trump was capable of doing back then, even if he wanted to do it. There's a strong suggestion that this really came from his connection to the Clintons. The Clintons had the kind of juice to be able to go ahead and tell various prosecutors in various localities. It's not something like the CIA goes into Palm Beach or New Mexico and starts talking about, well, we want you to do this and that, and the response would be, who are you? Local prosecutors don't answer to the CIA or the Mossad or M16 or whatever. They do, however, back then answer to the Clintons. And back then, protecting Bill Clinton was a big priority because Hillary Clinton was going to be the next presidential candidate. And before that, she was Secretary of State. So they had to be able to protect Bill Clinton against any particular scandals. And the real scandal there may not even be the underage sex trafficking. That may have been part of a bigger picture, which is the Clinton Foundation was moving huge amounts of money from foreign leaders, from foreign oligarchs, into a potential presidential candidacy. And I think that is really what was more explosive than whatever Epstein was doing with underage girls.
So what I see as a common theme with this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing is he seems to be much of a power broker, brokering deals and meetings between heads of industry, celebrities, politicians. I mean, the long list of people who actually flew on his plane and attended his parties, not parties that he attended, but his own specific parties. He had multiple meetings connecting the Clintons and other industry leaders together in order to basically graft a lot of power, influence, and money within the Democrat Party and that Democrat infrastructure. And we see that throughout Hollywood. We see that throughout Florida, throughout New York. We see that all over the place. And what I see getting missed is there's the hyper focus on the sex trafficking, and I think what the average person is really getting so angry about not seeing people getting perp walked in this is that once again these are elites who are obviously a double standard in the justice system where the elites get to walk away with 0 repercussions, 0 transparency, 0 accountability. And I don't necessarily lay that on Trump as I do the people who have been, doing this shit for the past 2 decades with this guy, who have been protecting this guy for the past 2 decades. Because the Clintons do have that kind of juice.
Yeah. There's no question that people are outraged, and they should be outraged, because nothing that happened was normal. Nothing what I described was normal. Nothing about his death, supposed suicide, was normal. People are right to think that there is something going on here. But I think it's accompanied by this kind of unrealism where you think that, yes, there are all these powerful people in the government. They were doing all these sorts of things, and there's this evidence sitting here in the box and just waiting for somebody to file Freedom of Information Act or, have somebody in the DOJ just go through it. I recall when had the Clinton investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails, and it concluded with the FBI taking all the hard drives and wiping all the hard drives. Yeah. And you had the Hunter Biden hard drives, laptops in the custody of the FBI. And again, if the FBI had been the only ones to have them in custody, I'm pretty sure they would have disappeared and they would have been wiped. So I had zero expectations going in that any of that information that's still relevant, that's still explosive, would be sitting there. It's been way too long and there've been way too many people. And if that information really was explosive, we really pointed the finger at major donors, at elites, at players, at people like, say, Bill Gates, at people like former presidents, current presidents, anything like that, that information would not just be sitting there. We know that.
Well, and see, that's the other thing, is because there were members of the royal family who were implicated in dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. And Prince Andrew doesn't exactly have a clean record when it comes to, sexual escapades. So, and they, despite what people don't, for those who don't seem to understand, the royal family still has quite a bit of diplomatic influence around the world. I mean, they're the last real monarchy. However, I never expected to actually see anything. When I saw Trump make the promise, I was like, yep, this is going to be a political football. Should have kept your mouth shut, because I never expected it to be there. And one of my big criticisms as a conservative myself is I don't believe the FBI or the CIA can actually be rebuilt or fixed when it's 99% populated by leftists at an infrastructural level. As we see polls coming out of DC that damn near everybody worked there is not just right, left of center, but polls progressive. I'm like, how are you going to fix an institution that is so far gone that they take pride in the corruption that they're involved in? And I see that as a serious problem, and this is why I never expected to see a lot of the reveals that we're supposed to get out of the FBI or the CIA. And if there is a list, and this is another thing, Pam Bondi's saying that there's a list. The reason why people are asking for a list is because you said there was a list. You said you were going to provide the list. You said you had it on your desk. Now, when people ask for the list, now you're gaslighting them and saying, why are you asking about a list? There's no list. Maybe you should have kept your mouth shut and not said it in the first place.
You're absolutely right. They should never have been making promises that they should have known they could not keep. They shouldn't have tried the dog and pony show with the influencers. It was absolutely very stupid. And they should have realized that at some point you can't actually just keep teasing people. People are going to actually want something. They're going to want something big. They're not going to want the thin gruel that they're being fed. And they're going to turn on you. They're going to be very angry. And that they're going to be doubly suspicious that you're involved in all this. If they just come in and said that, well, we don't really have much. We have these files. Some of this we're probably going to have to redact. It's not very impressive. It's not all that exciting. I'm sorry. It was probably destroyed. People would have been upset. Some people would have suspected them. But, there wouldn't have been this kind of backlash. And the backlash in many cases is deserved because, again, they really set themselves up for it.
Agreed. Again, this is Daniel Greenfield. He is a conservative columnist and an investigative journalist. He is also an executive vice president of programs at David Horowitz Freedom Center. You need to follow his work and follow a lot of his writings on Jeffrey Epstein and all the stuff that people are missing. And because, once the grifter class gets attached to anything, it's more about clicks, likes, retweets, shares, and subscribership than it is about the truth. From that point. And I'm not saying that there aren't good people asking the right questions, but unfortunately a lot of people, it's the grift. And I understand why a lot of people are pissed, because I'm just pissed that I keep being gaslighted and told that it's not an issue when you made it an issue. If you make it an issue, now I have a right to say, why did you make it an issue if it's a non-issue? And I wish Trump in this regard would just shut the hell up. Like, I'm not a Trump sycophant. If you don't want people to talk about it, you should probably stop talking about it. But you have a book, sir. Where can people find your book?
It's Domestic Enemies, the Founding Fathers Fight Against the Left. It's the history of the early left in American history. And it's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookstores with better taste near you.
All right. So, in regard to what we're seeing, what do you think is the most destructive thing we're seeing about this narrative regarding Epstein, either from mainstream media or what we're seeing on X among the influencer class and stuff like that?
I think what's really destructive is right now there's a ticking clock. There's a limited time for Congress to do anything. In the midterms, we could very well end up with a Democrat House, a Democrat. The Republicans will no longer enjoy the legislative majority, and right now a lot of effort is being squandered and wasted focused on this stuff, which is not going to go anywhere. If the umpteenth hearings actually produce something, I'd be excited, but I've been around long enough. At this point, everybody's been around long enough to know the congressional hearings don't actually accomplish anything. What they do is waste precious time that could actually be focused on achieving the president's agenda, achieving actual real change before the Democrats come in.
The one thing that you do, and this is where I agree with Thomas Massey, the one thing that you do get out of a congressional open hearing is the inability for leadership to control what questions are asked, because each member can go ahead and ask their question, and it's almost impossible to filter out all members during a congressional hearing. However, it more often than not becomes a fundraising campaign. And that is my major criticism, is that I find them to be wholly unproductive the majority of the time, because they don't turn out results or anything actionable. And you never see transparency or accountability come out of these, like real transparency. And you never see real accountability come out of any of this. I'm beginning to just not care at this point. I don't think I'm going to see a lot. I don't think I'm going to see anything productive, and I am worried about the midterms. And the reason I'm worried about the midterms is because I see a lot of the rhetoric becoming counterproductive, and I saw Trump gain a lot of votes that the GOP never would have gotten with any other candidate. And I don't see us building up the infrastructure to capitalize on those new voting demographics with young men, Hispanic men, black men, with younger generations. I see us making the mistake of thinking that we can just lackadaisically walk into 2026 when Trump is not at the top of the ticket to help all these votes rise.
And there hasn't been much of a plan to actually conserve these votes, to actually service these demographics, to actually show them there's a reason you voted for us. Now we're giving you something. We're doing something for you. That has not really happened in a meaningful way. And that's a major problem because, yes, there is this major split between the general Republican demographic and the Trump demographic, and I don't think the two have ever meshed very well. And right now, a lot of people mistook this groundswell of support. In many cases, it was really a vote against all the things that the Biden administration has been doing. The general sense that a lot of young men have been kicked in the teeth, and that they were actually willing to look at some sort of other option. But it doesn't mean that you can just take them for granted.
I completely agree. I've often said that there is. I ran for office back in the 2022 cycle. I've worked in politics on campaigns and as a consultant, as a political strategist. And one of the things that I have consistently said through my trips back and forth to DC is that there is an entire class of people who are surfers. They ride whatever wave they can ride to get into office. They will say whatever they need to say to get the seat that they want to be in. And as soon as it is no longer convenient to ride that wave, they will hop off and ride the next wave. And right coming into the midterms, especially if Trump does not keep a decent majority, you're going to see I'd say 60% of the people who rode the Trump train to get into office, they are going to jump off that wave as soon as possible. And all of a sudden, Trump is going to become persona non grata, because a lot of the stuff that he ran on is contradictory to the machine that operates within the Beltway of people who have this universalist needing to legislate everything from the top down mentality.
Absolutely. You've got it. He's going to get it from both sides. He's already getting it from both sides. There are the old school Republicans, and there's some people who want to be more MAGA than Trump, and there are people who generally are grifters and like to stir things up. And we're heading for a perfect storm because we're now looking at a divided party going into the midterms. The Democrats are more likely to become a united party at this point. And when you have a united going up against divided, united tends to win.
That's the big thing. We say it a lot on this show. My co-host says it all the time. Our superpower is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and Republicans will agree on 9 out of 10 things and kill each each other over the thing we disagree on before we accomplish the 9 things we agree on. And the Democrats are exactly the opposite. They will disagree on 1 out of 10 things, and they will leave that one thing till the end after they've completely whooped us on the other 9 things. And that has been the big thing. Like, you can get every Democrat to agree never vote a Republican. You can't get every Republican to agree not to vote a Democrat.
Yeah, absolutely. The Democrats are mission focused. The Republicans are not. So the Republicans are in it for personality. Some of them are just in it for servicing very narrow donor agendas, and some of them are just out there to get attention any way they can. We've seen the emergence of a squad within the Republican Party, one that is really focused on building its own brand, not on actually fulfilling any kind of agenda.
Yeah, I've said that too. I'm glad you said it. There are people within the Republican Party who are perfectly happy to be the AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley of the GOP, and they're like, yeah, now we have our own squad. I'm like, that is not a freaking good thing. That is not a good thing. I don't want performative politicians. I want politicians who actually fight. So this is where I say I am not in line with the old school neocon, we need to have decorum over good legislation. And I'm also not in line with the, I just want me a good conservative fighter who's going to stand up and say the shit that I want to be said, even if they don't get anything done. Because I don't see that as productive either. If you're going to fight, it needs to be like the founding fathers. Have duels on the House floor, beat the crap out of each other with canes, but actually get shit done. Because that's what the vast majority of American people want. That's the reason why Congress has such a low approval rating. Like, what are they, in single digits right now? I think last I saw it was 8%.
Yeah. And it's only getting worse because Congress is fundamentally broken. They're incapable of getting anything done. And that is all that matters. Most people actually want you to get things done. The percentage of people on Twitter, on X, who want you to say something is tiny compared to the percentage of people in your own district who have a set of things they want from you.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it firsthand. We're discussing immigration policy, and out of all the policies that we lined out collectively between me and like 3 other candidates running for Congress, the whole conversation somehow devolved to, well, I'm going to vote for whoever says illegal aliens because we need to call it like it is. And I'm like, I don't give a shit if you call them purple people eaters. Deport them. Is it like, do you care what I call them if I deport them? That's the thing that Trump, he gained Hispanic voters and black men on immigration, on avoiding World War III and some semblance of rational, level-headed foreign policy, fixing the economics, bringing back jobs, manufacturing, safe communities, things that are real kitchen table issues. And to his credit for shutting down the border, stopping illegal entries and stuff like that, I'm sorry, I don't see Obama-level deportations yet, and I need to see Obama-level deportations. I want to see millions. I don't care if you got to load them in catapults and kick them over back over the wall like a Acme rocket or something, like Wile E. Coyote. But something needs to give. It's got to give, right?
It is. It's absolutely urgent. And we keep saying over and over again that for the moment, Democrats have been able to obstruct policy after policy after policy. And as long as they actually make it this much more difficult, virtue signaling alone is not going to fix that. You actually have to perform.
Would you? I've long had this premise that when Democrats come to the table, so you have 2 options when you want to negotiate something, right? You either both come to the table in good faith with, here's something that we think you'll accept, and you offer something you think we'll accept, and then we haggle from there over the fine line details. Or you come to the table in bad faith, which means you come with 100% of what you want, and I come with 100% of what I want, and then we beat each other down until we come to a compromise there. The Democrats come to the table in bad faith with 100% of what they want all the time, and we come to the table with what we think they'll accept, and then they beat us back from there. So we get 40% of what they want, or 40% of what we want, and they get 60% of what we want. We wonder why the progressive machine continues to go forward election cycle after election cycle, no matter who happens to be in office.
Yeah, well, Republicans tend to have a lot of explanations for why they can't do things. Democrats really have explanations for why they can't do things. They have a plan to get things done anyway, anyhow, any way they can do it. If they can't do it one way, they'll do it another way. They'll do it through a back door. One of the things that's happening now is this fight over what's considered a federal public benefit, and it harkens back to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton agreed to a Republican proposal to actually get immigrants off welfare. But what he went ahead was he then went ahead and reclassified a whole bunch of welfare as not being a federal public benefit. So they always find a way to get things done. Republicans find excuses for not getting things done because they don't really want to get things done in many cases. In other cases, they've had all this experience, and what their experience has taught them is how they can not get things done. How they can find excuses for not getting things done, how nothing gets done anyway. They have a lot of stories about how nothing really gets done anyway. And once you have people with a lot of stories about how nothing gets done, well, you need to replace them with people who actually believe in getting things done.
I'm glad you said it right there. We got Daniel Greenfield giving us the scoop on everything inside DC and the Jeffrey Epstein files, the stuff you really should be paying attention to. Go buy his book, Domestic Enemies. Please support authors and the guests we have on this show. They are giving you the knowledge you desperately need outside the griftery machine we see so prevalent online and in DC and the Beltway. And up next, we have Dan Nash coming on. See you after the break. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Thank you.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving Southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Welcome back to Granite State Live. Up next, For this segment, we have Dan Nash exposing overlooked truths and real solutions in American human trafficking. He is the founder of the Human Trafficking Training Center. Dan Nash is he was a retired Missouri State Trooper, 27-year career, 24 years of which he spent on the Narcotics Vice Unit. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here.
So, why is the quote unquote missing kids narrative, while important, why is it continuously overshadow the vast majority of what we should be talking about when it comes to human trafficking? Why is this the misnomer that everyone gloms onto?
Well, missing kids are super important, right? I mean, anytime we have, underage folks that are, victims of crime, we want to be all over that. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to do that. But when you look at human trafficking in America, you're talking 2/3 to 3/4 of all human trafficking victims in America are actually just adult females. And nobody really ever talks about that.
So I understand why everybody harps on, kids. I have three kids. So I understand, because it pulls on your heartstrings, right? Because they're innocent.
100%.
And we attach to that. But when the numbers are showing that this is a much bigger issue, and we're only looking at it through a myopic lens, what are we missing? What are we overall missing that we should be paying attention to here?
So I think we're missing a couple of different things. One thing is most people don't understand that up to 3/4 of trafficking victims in America are adults. They're adult females. We think that human trafficking is like international. It's all these international issues, people coming here, brought here from other countries that are being trafficked. Does that happen? 100%. Is it a big deal that our border is now secure and we don't have unaccompanied minors coming across it and vulnerable adults coming across it? 100%. Does that help trafficking in America? Yes, it does. But most trafficking victims in America are adult females, and they're American citizens. And I think if we're really going to stop human trafficking, we have to understand all the different versions, and we have to understand where most of the victims are coming from. And they're coming from towns and cities right here in our country.
What are you seeing? How are these people getting into human trafficking? How do they become victims? What is the most prevalent source?
So it's really all about vulnerabilities, right? There's lots of different things that can be vulnerabilities. Poverty can be a vulnerability. Coming from a broken home can be a vulnerability. Being physically abused, sexually abused, lots of different things can be vulnerabilities. All traffickers do is find the vulnerabilities, exploit those vulnerabilities, and then they simply try to use these vulnerabilities to force these people into criminal activity where they can make money. Typically what we see is prostitution, right? Some 90 to 94% of all prostitution is trafficking. The idea that people are picking to be prostitutes and doing this on their own is really kind of a fallacy. Does that sometimes happen? Well, yeah, but in the most part, it's not. Somebody is forcing them to do that, or they're forcing them into forced labor, or they're forcing them into other types of criminal activity. Fraud, drug distribution, forgeries, other things like that. For the traffickers, it's simply about money.
So that actually tracks back to something that actually happened here in New Hampshire. We just had a ring of massage parlors giving explicit services across the state being shut down for being connected with human trafficking, coming out of a ring out of New York. Quote unquote Asian massage parlors in New Hampshire. And then, what we're seeing coming out of the DCYF cases in New Hampshire, there has been quite a few kids who have gone missing who they fall off the roster, disappear, end up being vulnerable, whether it's through transition from one facility to another, especially during COVID. And it turns out that they end up in prostitution. They end up in human trafficking. They end up just disappearing off the rosters. First they get hooked on drugs, then it's once you're vulnerable, they can get you hooked on anything.
Yeah, so both of those are really big problems in America. Children that are in the foster care industry, children that are runaways, those kinds of things, super vulnerable to being trafficked. Stats are basically 1 out of 6 kids that are from the foster care industry end up being trafficked. 1 out of 5 runaways end up being trafficked. Super, super vulnerable. The illicit massage business industry in America is actually the largest of all, or the fastest growing, quickest growing of all human trafficking here in the United States. And that's typically Chinese organized crime, and that's a real problem. And you're talking about it being out of New York, 100%. Flushing, New York is kind of the epicenter in America of this illicit massage business all across America.
So what are the we see a lot of sensationalized statistics and a lot of politicized stories. What harm is that doing to the actual fight itself?
It's great harm. So, like, for example, most people in America really think that human trafficking is like the movie Taken or Sound of Freedom, and that's really just not true. The idea that somebody's going to kidnap your daughter or your son off the Target parking lot and traffic them is just not what we see in the United States. Very, very, very rare is anybody kidnapped like that in America. That's not what happens. They find the vulnerabilities, they exploit those vulnerabilities, and then they get these people into positions where they're being forced to commit criminal activity so the trafficker can make money. But the idea that somebody's going to kidnap us or kidnap our kid is just not what we see. In fact, 70% of all juvenile abductions in America are your ex. They're your ex-husband or your ex-wife. So that's typically where you're going to look at if you're looking for an abduction scenario.
Wow, that is well, that's depressing. So what are some of the proven methods for law enforcement and health professionals to truly combat the human trafficking in today's society? Are we making advancements? Are we having a larger effect?
The answer to that is mixed. Here is probably one of the other big fallacies in America, and that is that law enforcement is trained in human trafficking, and that is completely far from the truth. Only about 17% of law enforcement in America have any human trafficking training whatsoever. And if we look at skills-based training, which is what law enforcement really needs to be effective, we're talking 8%. And most people think that, that's just the small police departments. That's the small sheriff's departments. They're the ones that maybe don't have that trafficking. But that's absolutely not true. It's the largest departments just as much as the smallest departments. I'll give you an example. And I'm just using these examples because they're really big agencies that everybody would know. The FBI, for example, huge agency, multi-million-dollar a year budget, tens of thousands of officers. They get zero training in the FBI Academy on human trafficking. None, not 1 minute. U.S. Marshals, none. DEA, none. Customs and Border Patrol, none. We're not training our officers. I never had training as a Missouri State Trooper until later in my career. We just don't get the training. If we don't get the training, how are we going to be expected to work and investigate human trafficking? And that's why we're so busy at the Human Trafficking Training Center, because that's what we do, is provide law enforcement with that training. And once that happens, it's immediate. Last year, we did 59 trainings in 28 states, taught just shy of 7,000 police officers. They left that training and found 587 trafficking victims. The quickest was 5 hours and 14 minutes. The youngest was 11. Happens very, very quickly once they're trained.
All right, so that was stark and something that caught me by surprise. You just said the Customs and Border Patrol is not trained in human trafficking despite what is happening at our southern border specifically with the amount of trafficking that comes across? That is insane to me.
They do not get that.
Wow. So that talk about sending your troops onto the battlefield without the tools in their tool belt.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's federal agencies, it's state police agencies, it's large agencies, it's small agencies, it's medium-sized agencies. It's across the board. We are just not trained in human trafficking. And to me, it's kind of like looking for a drunk driver. How do you expect the police to arrest a drunk driver if they don't know what a drunk driver looks like driving down the road, and they don't know how to handle the drunk driver once they stop that drunk driver, right? You're not going to arrest drunk drivers. It's the same with trafficking. If they don't know what to do, they won't get anything accomplished.
I got to say, the other surprise that came out of that, when you said that I am no fan of the FBI, and I have never been a fan of the FBI as a ridiculously politically corrupt organization throughout their entire history. However, they're supposed to be dealing with interstate crime. You would think that they would be the ones that have at least some people trained in human trafficking. To hear that is like, we're failing our American citizens here.
We are, and I've had FBI agents that come to our training, right? And I've had them in at least 4 states that I can think of. And these are people that are actually assigned and working human trafficking cases. And they literally told me, this is the first time I've ever had any human trafficking training, and I'm supposed to be working these cases, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
All right, so that you heard that right here. All right, I don't know how we have law enforcement agencies in this country with this being such a prevalent issue that are not trained, especially the people who are on the front lines, supposed to be dealing with it on a daily basis and investigating these cases. Again, this is Dan Nash. He is the founder of the Human Trafficking Training Center. You need to be supporting what he does. You need to be looking at what he does. And if you're in law enforcement and you deal with human trafficking, even a small bit, you need to be getting trained. You need to have the tools in your tool belt to do the job properly. Another question that I happen to have: what are some of the challenges that are being faced by and overlooked by adult survivors, especially American women, and how do we need to change the discourse in the way that we approach this?
So I think when it comes to finding trafficking victims and helping them, I think there's, again, a misconception that these are just people that have made poor life decisions or bad choices in life, and they've got addicted to drugs and alcohol, or they've done this or they've done that. And that's typically not what we find. We find that, yes, they have vulnerabilities, but typically those vulnerabilities were because of nothing that they did. Maybe they were abused when they were a kid. They were physically or sexually abused, or they grow up in poverty or whatever, and then they have these vulnerabilities. If we do not get these victim services and get them all this stuff that they need, counseling, therapy, drug rehab, all this different stuff, the chances of them going back to being trafficked again is like 70%. So if we don't get them into services and do these things to help them, they literally go right back. And then that just drains our system, because it drains our criminal justice system. It drains the medical system. It drains social services. It drains everything. So we are way better off when we can find them, have law enforcement find them, arrest that trafficker, and then get those victims into the services and get them into a good, healthy place so they can thrive in society. That's better for them. It's cheaper for us. It's just a win-win for everybody.
So what makes, well, one, I have 2 questions here. What got you into this? So there's always an origin story that makes warriors walk onto the battlefield and don their armor. What's yours? And how is the Human Trafficking Training Center leading the paradigm shift and how we're fighting trafficking in our own communities, training methodologies, so on and so forth?
I got into this because I was a young detective, and I had a situation where I thought some prostitution activity was taking place. We'd had some complaints about it in this area, and I ended up contacting a lady who was about 20 years old, and she was with a 40-year-old male on a parking lot. I had no idea what to do. I didn't understand PTSD. I didn't understand trauma bonding. I didn't understand trafficking. We didn't even call it trafficking back in late 90s. And I tried to do what I thought was the best way to handle the situation. I was completely unsuccessful. She was very belligerent and uncooperative and did not do anything to me. And I finally just said, fine, you're free to go. And off they went. 2 months later, she killed herself in a bathtub in a hotel, and she left behind a 1-year-old little boy. And I literally was like, I had her. And she was being trafficked by that guy. But I literally had her in the palm of my hand. I did not know what to do. I did not help her. I did not do anything. And my agency's motto was service and protection. And I'm like, I didn't serve her, and I sure as hell didn't protect her. So I was like, we've got to do something different, because I never wanted to look myself in the mirror again and think, I let somebody down like that again. So it became kind of a mission for me to figure this stuff out. And literally after 10 or 12 years of failure after failure after failure after failure, I finally started figuring a few things out here and a few things out there, and eventually I ended up here trying to teach other law enforcement officers so that they don't have to go through the failures and the stuff that I went through.
Wow. Can you explain? You created this special victims methodology. Can you explain that?
So what that is a way that we created to be much more successful in trying to communicate with a trafficking victim. A traditional law enforcement interview has a success rate of about 6 to 7%. Very few of these victims are going to disclose that they're being trafficked. That's just not what they do. It's just reality. So after we've been trying to do that for 50 years. So literally for years and years and years, I was like, there's got to be a different way to do this. There's got to be a more successful way to do this. So after failure and failure and failure and failure, we eventually started figuring out some ways to be more successful. And now we've been able to come up with the special victims methodology, which is what we teach law enforcement today all across America. I taught it today in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And it's a way for us to get about a 50% disclosure rate from a trafficking victim versus a 6 to 7% disclosure rate, which is a game changer because now we're able to identify traffickers, arrest traffickers, and we're able to get victims into the services that they need so they can get healthy.
More to the illicit massage business, which obviously just hit New Hampshire and is popping up all over the country and becoming such a common issue. You created the 4 corner strategy for investigating it. Can you explain that?
So the illicit massage business industry was always a real kind of a thorn in my side, so to speak, because I could not figure those things out, and I failed and failed for years. And law enforcement across the country has failed. That's why now there's 19,000 illicit massage businesses in the United States, worth about $5 billion a year. That's about what they make. There are so many illicit massage businesses in California and New York. There are more of those than there are Starbucks and McDonald's combined. It's crazy the amount of they're everywhere now, right? So we created this strategy of going after these illicit massage businesses, and it's been uber successful. We are teaching law enforcement how to go after these, how to get all the key players, how to shut the business down, and how to help all the victims. And when we do that, again, it's a win-win for everybody. We're stopping Chinese organized crime, we're helping victims, and we're arresting traffickers.
Again, everybody, this is Dan Nash. He is the founder of Human Trafficking and Training Center. You should be paying attention to what he is doing, and if you're in law enforcement, you should be reaching out so you can get trained in how to stop this epidemic that is happening in the United States. We need to protect the women and minors who are involved in this perverse industry. I mean, without cursing, I can't figure out any a worse way to describe it. What are some of the realities versus myths besides just the age that we should be picking up on?
So typically people ask me all the time, like, what should I be looking for? What is the easiest thing to spot? What is the easiest thing to see? And there's things like control, somebody that's controlling somebody that's not in control of their own money or their own travel or things like that. Those are pretty generic things, but yeah, those are things that we look for. We teach law enforcement about specific tattoos that they should be looking for, because in the trafficking world, traffickers will put specific tattoos on their victims. Traffickers themselves may have specific tattoos that are shining a light that they are a trafficker. They do this all the time. So we teach law enforcement those things. Probably the easiest thing for the general public to see is prostitution. When you're driving around your town and you have prostitution taking place on a specific street, over 90% of that is trafficking. When you're driving to work and you're dropping off your dry cleaning and you see that illicit massage business, and everybody that's listening to this knows where a illicit massage business is. We all do that, right? And we've joked about them and we've laughed about them, but it's not joking to those girls that are being trafficked in those places. It's not joking to them. When you see one of those, report it to the police. Let the police know that you see this in your neighborhood and that you're concerned about it, right? So they can investigate it. Those things are very easy for us to see, and we can see those every single day wherever we live.
How can we change the national dialogue to be more than just a political football? I mean, because the only time anybody at the national level, whether it's, pundits, influencers, politicians themselves, want to discuss this is if they can lambaste the other side with it. They can use it as a political football or something to play political gangbanging with.
Well, I think one thing that we need to do, and I'm hoping that this administration will do that, is you cannot look to anybody and say, all right, that person is our leader in human trafficking. That person is leading the way in human trafficking, or that particular agency is leading the way in human trafficking. That's not the way it is. Everybody's kind of working in their own little silos. You have certain states or certain departments that are doing way better than others. Other states and other departments aren't doing anything. But as a national, across the United States program or initiative, we don't have anything like that. Everybody's just kind of like on their own, doing their own thing. We have no national leadership that we can look to and say, that is our human trafficking czar. That is the person that's leading the way. We have nothing like that in America.
So that's something that I didn't know, and that's incredibly concerning, but I can't say it's a surprise based on what you told me about the Border Patrol and the FBI. But and from a military tactic, you have generals, you have commanders, you have your majors, your colonels, so on and so forth. You have your chain of command. You have your missions coming from above, and then you have small unit leadership executing the mission. If you do not have somebody who is directing the mission from the top and coalescing some sort of interagency communication so everybody's working together and seems to be on the same page of trying to solve this, how are we ever going to see measurable difference in the human trafficking in the United States?
I agree, and I get calls weekly from governor's offices, from attorney general's offices, from different people across the country going, man, we need to be doing something about this. What should we be doing, right? We need training. We need this. We need that. But we still don't have that person that's leading the way that's doing this. I mean, I'm traveling all across the country trying to do my part, but we don't have that leadership of somebody saying, okay, this is our plan, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to get results from this, because it's results. If we're just going to get lip service, then I'm not really interested. I want to see results. That's why our training issues results, right? I want to see that. And when we do that, then I think that is when we will finally start turning the corner on human trafficking. It's the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. Only drug trafficking makes more money right now than human trafficking, and it's gaining on drug trafficking. Some estimates are within 20 years it will pass drug trafficking. We need to get on this now.
All right, well, there you have it, Trump administration. You need to get on the ball, and I would suggest contacting Dan Nash, the founder of the Human Trafficking Training Center, and possibly making him your human trafficking czar so we can actually crack down on this, seeing as you're the professional who's actually going out there training and creating the methodologies to capture this and actually protect these young women and children who are involved in this. I don't see anybody else more qualified to take the position. So Trump, if you want to solve this, this is your guy for the job. How about making a phone call? Thank you so much for coming on. As depressing as this topic is, my mind is blown at what we've learned this segment. Tell people where they can contact you and how they can support your work, please.
You can contact us at our website, which is humantraffickingtrainingcenter.com. Altogether, humantraffickingtrainingcenter.com. From there, you can see where our trainings are. You can see how you can support us. You can contact me directly from there, and we would love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on, and I would like to have you come back on soon because I don't think this is a problem that's going to be going away anytime soon. That's the end of the segment. Up next, we're going to have another fantastic guest for you. We have Salvador Litvik, a Jewish comedian who is going to be he's going to have us laughing. I'm ready. I'm wearing a diaper, so if I pee myself laughing right now, I don't embarrass myself on air. Come up next after the break. We'll see you in a minute. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
All right, welcome back to Granite State Live. We're rocking out in studio and ready for our next guest. We got Salvador Litvick, author of Let My People Laugh, Greatest Jewish Jokes of All Time, here to add some levity in a world of constant Jewspiracies and crazy people spinning down the rabbit hole about how apparently the Jews run the world once again. You know, we're just going to repeat the same shit we did, like, I don't know. Didn't we do that once? Wasn't there a guy with a weird mustache across the sea that we kind of kicked his ass? He had some Jewspiracies too, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So you have Guns N' Moses, a new film spotlighting Jews and Second Amendment rights and rising anti-Semitism. I can't tell you how glad I am to have you on. I am a constant critic of Jewspiracy theories. I think they're comical, and they seem to be passed around among the people with no accolades, no success, no nothing to their life to glom onto, and they're all incredibly angry and they're it's really easy to be angry when you're all fighting over the last two brain cells.
Exactly. It's a story as old as the hills, looking for a scapegoat for all their problems. And in every generation, they have a new story about why the Jews are bad. Either we keep to ourselves, and so that's the problem, or we're trying to enter the culture, and that's the problem. We don't have enough money. We have too much money. We don't have enough power. We have too much power. And what's amazing is how many intelligent people, otherwise intelligent people, are so easily manipulated with these lies. I mean, one of the funniest things of all is to call Israel a colonizer. Anybody who has ever looked at a map of the Middle East can see how ridiculous that story is. Israel's a tiny sliver of a country surrounded by 47 countries that have been colonized by radical political Islam. And all the Israelis want to do is just live and get along. Here in America, the danger to Jews. I'm an Orthodox Jew, and I'm not wearing my movie hat. I just walk around in a kippah. That's to say, a visible Jew. And we've been aware about the danger to the Jewish community for quite a while. And long before October 7th, I joined an organization called Magen Am. In Hebrew, that means Shield of the Nation, that trains and licenses regular guys like me to carry a firearm because the danger is real. And please God, we should never need such skills. But if we do, we will not be a soft target. And in our movie, Guns N' Moses, which is an action thriller, it's not a documentary, it's not an issue movie per se, but it's extraordinary how relevant and ripped from the headlines it's become. But in the movie, a rabbi whose synagogue is attacked violently, and then there's a murder and a conspiracy to solve, and as the danger level mounts, he goes through real firearms training and learns how to protect his family and his community. But, in most movies, when that happens, they put a few tin cans on a fence. 15 seconds later, the guy can shoot. And anyone who's actually learned to shoot in the real world knows how difficult it is and how unrealistic that usual movie treatment is. And in our film, Guns N' Moses, our star, Mark Feuerstein, goes through real training. And then the other stars, just do such a good job in the movie. Christopher Lloyd, Neil McDonough, Dermot Mulroney. What I can promise people is a very entertaining thrill ride.
Neil McDonough is quickly becoming one of my favorite actors with Angel Studios. I just watched Homestead, and now I watched Last Rodeo, and I've been a big fan of him for years for coming out with starring in absolutely fantastic works. I am a massive Second Amendment supporter. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine, shout out to Maj Touré, runs Black Guns Matter, goes all over the country teaching people who live in the inner city how to protect themselves as well. I think a polite society is a armed society. When you can't take advantage of people, all of a sudden everybody starts to use their manners. I find we live in a world full of people who pop off at the mouth or like to start stuff because they never got popped in the mouth as a kid. Maybe we need to bring back pugilistics in school. But so give me. It's become so popular to spin down the Jewspiracy rabbit hole. Recently, and we watch Candace Owens do it, we watch Tucker Carlson do it and stuff. And I work in a lot of black issues, and like with a lot of Jewish issues, there's always this undertone of it's the blacks, it's the Jews, and I'm sitting there going, no, it's certain people, Marxists, who happen to be Jewish. But they're not Marxist because they're Jews. If you're a real Marxist,
quite the contrary.
Yeah. If you're a real Marxist, being a Marxist takes precedent over everything else. Your Judaism, your race, your ethnicity, everything becomes secondary to being a Marxist. If you're a Jew, an actual practicing Orthodox Jew, your Judaism comes prior to any ideological other centers.
Exactly. And I think Jews and Christians, while we disagree on certain fundamental ideas, we have so much more in common with each other that we prize the Judeo-Christian values that this country was founded on. And those are eternal values. They're not subject to the whim of every passing decade and every generation, where they have the new cause du jour. The people who are backing, globalize the Intifada and Queers for Palestine crowd, etc. They're not thinking through what it is that they're saying and who they're backing. I mean, these terrorists who are hell bent on murdering Jews because they don't think that Israel should exist at all. It's ridiculous. But if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. It's an old saying. And so, yes, these people will fall into these thought patterns that often have the scapegoat. I mean, this guy in New York City, the Democrat candidate for mayor, Mamdani, this is a disaster brewing. I can only pray to God that this guy's not going to get elected, because this would be so bad for the Big Apple, such a great city. But this guy will ruin everything. I mean, he's already talking about how he's going to spend other people's money until there's no money, and then he's going to have to consolidate control. I mean, it's the classic story of a communist: promise everything, and then when you can't deliver anything, just kill all your opponents. I don't know how far it's going to go. A mayor of New York is not going to kill opponents, I don't think. But the story makes no sense that he's telling.
And I do want to say it. I just said it for the Jews. So for people who are questioning my intellectual consistency, yes, Mamdani is a Marxist first. He is an Islamist second. That doesn't mean he cannot make them work in tandem. It just means ideologically one comes before the other. And that goes for the guy in Minneapolis who's running for mayor as well, Fryer, who I believe just won his primary, and he's getting the Democratic nod. I don't understand why this is something that people want in the United States. Have we not watched enough Marxist societies collapse around the world to understand how, one, repugnant to the Constitution this ideology is, two, how overtly destructive of everything socially, infrastructurally, and economically within a country that it literally destroys the soul.
Every time it's been tried. Every time it's been tried. They make all these promises and everyone's going to be equal. And then, lo and behold, some are more equal than others. The ones who join the party and get the handouts. And it's really it's always a power grab. It always becomes a power grab. And as for, these colleges and how crazy they've become, the anti-Semitism is just one example. But it's a bought and paid for phenomenon. That this money that's come in from various sources, but especially from Mideast money, where a big part of the Arab studies departments and the intersectional philosophy that takes root in the college is going to be speaking against the Jews, that's for sure. But it's also just speaking against America. I mean, parents are paying $100,000 a year for their kid to go to this allegedly elite institution to learn that America sucks. America's bad. America's going in the wrong direction. America is racist. America is sexist. And it's so demoralizing to the young generation of this country. And that's by design. To demoralize the young people of a country weakens that country and enables these foreign sources of money to acquire more power, in the international scene at the expense of American strength.
I am I'm an equal opportunity excoriator, and I always make
well done.
I always make the preface that you can have valid criticisms of Bibi Netanyahu and his foreign policy. You can have valid criticism of the Israeli government and how it operates. You can have valid criticism of the American government. I spend all damn day criticizing the American government and politicians like across the aisle, but on my own side of the aisle. I don't care if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you're right. And I'm willing to give credit to anybody who gets anything right. And the problem that I always see is it starts out with a little bit of valid criticism. and a little bit of truth. You can criticize the influence of AIPAC, but it does not mean that Jews are running the United States. The reason AIPAC has the outsized influence that it does is because a lot of Republicans, evangelical Republicans, see kinship with Jews.
Yeah.
Because we are Zionists, much of the evangelical right are Zionists, which means we do believe in the homeland. We do believe in the Holy Land. So it's less that AIPAC has the ability to wield so much money and more that there is an ideological agreement that is happening here. And that doesn't mean that Jews are running everything and are secretly plotting to take over the world, but it means that you can't offhand can make the conclusion that everybody's interests are conspiratorial. Not 15 million Jews are not in on a giant conspiracy.
That's for sure. And if we are, we're not doing a very good job of running things because it's not going so well for us. No, I mean, exactly. Why would a conspiracy theory ever work? Because there's some truth in it, because there's some kernel of truth to build around. But then when you start laying on the lies, the thing can spin out of control in so many directions, and it does. And it does.
You have, so I gotta remind people, he's got a book. Aside of the jokes, aside of everything, he's got a book. Let My People Laugh, the greatest Jewish jokes of all time. All right, so because you're a comedian, you got to lay a few on us, because we were just talking at the beginning of the show about how American comedy, cinema, and music has just gone the way of the wayside, and we're not allowed to laugh anymore. So I'm wearing my adult diaper. I'm ready for it. Go ahead.
Well, here's one. A rabbi and a Hindu priest and a politician. They're buddies. They go hiking. They're planning to, stay in some kind of a camping shelter, but they get lost. Night is falling. What are we going to do? They see a farmhouse. They go, they knock on the door. They ask if they can spend the night. The farmer says, it's no problem, but my guest room is quite small. It has 2 beds. One of you is going to have to sleep in the barn. The Hindu priest says, it's no problem. I will take the barn. The rabbi and the politician are settling down for the night, and then there's a knock on the door. It's the Hindu priest, and he says, my brothers, I'm sorry. There's a cow in the barn. I can't sleep beside this holy animal. The rabbi says, guys, no problem. I'll take the barn. The Hindu priest and the politician are settling down for the night. There's a knock on the door. It's the rabbi. He says, there's a pig in the barn. I can't sleep beside the filthy animal. The politician says, let it be remembered that I sacrificed my comfort for the greater good. And off he goes to the barn. The rabbi and the Hindu priest are settling down for the evening. There's a knock on the door. They open it. It's the cow and the pig.
Oh, God. That's good. That's good. I can't. I absolutely. I despise politicians. I know so many. Politicians. I know so many politicians, but you know what? I'm absolutely sure that cows and pigs will feel grieved by having to spend a night with a politician. I mean, shit. What is it? Politicians are ranked below lawyers and just above lawyers and used car salesmen as the least trustworthy job in America. I would say weathermen should also be up there. Okay. There's no way you can be wrong.
I live in California. These guys have such a nothing job. It's the same thing every day.
I'm absolutely sure being I'm absolutely sure being a weatherman means you get to go to school and just get drunk every single day, because you don't have to be right about shit. You can be wrong
Apparently
on everything.
No. Do you have to go to school at all? I mean, is it true that weathermen are meteorologists, or are they really just somebody who stands in front of the screen and reads the script? I'm a little unclear on that.
Yeah, people keep telling me that they're meteorologists, but I don't know, the pretty face. I don't see a lot of scientists who end up being that good looking standing in front of a teleprompter. It's very rare that the nerdy guy in school ends up being the one who looks like an underwear model standing on News 7 telling you it could be 6 inches or it could be 9 inches. You never know. You're just going to have to come and find out. I don't believe it, because it's like, oh, well, ladies, tomorrow we're going to have 12 inches of rain, and then we get 3 inches, and it's like, I don't think you know what 12 inches really looks like, guy.
Apparently not. But he's on TV, so maybe he doesn't need to.
If you can say anything convincingly enough, with enough conviction, people will give you a job and allow you to do it.
That is a fact. That is a fact. I would like to say something about the town that I work in, about Hollywood. I'll tell you a little story that I think you'll appreciate. So when we finished cutting this movie, we cut picture. Now we're working on sound and music, visual effects. But you could see the story, see the movie as it plays out. And my producing partner showed it to this big agent, a suit, right, a Hollywood suit, whose job it is to sell independent movies to distributors. An expert, what America's looking for. And he watches our movie and he says, Guns N' Moses, great movie. You guys are going to make a lot of money in streaming. So I say, well, thank you, but we see this as a theatrical film. And he says, yeah, but this movie about a rabbi whose synagogue is attacked and he becomes an unlikely gunfighter and detective and he pursues the leads, etc., an edge-of-your-seat thriller. It's nice, but how many Jews are there really in America? I said, he says, New York, LA, Florida. I said, listen, that's an important part of our audience, but a much bigger part of our audience is Christian and conservative. He says, what are you talking about? Those people hate Jews. Now, this guy is an expert in who America is and what America is looking for. And that's all you have to know about how Hollywood has just lost the plot, and why they keep relying on, sequel, prequel, reboot, retread, and they run those franchises into the ground. And even the big successful movies that you hear are making a lot of money, they spent so much more money in marketing that they just expect to lose every time a movie's in the theaters, and they hope to make it up in streaming because they've lost connection with who America is and what America is and what they're looking for. As far as Christians and conservatives hating Jews, I know this guy's wrong. I know he's a liar. Or not a liar, he just doesn't know. Because I also have a Jewish wisdom platform that my wife and I run called Accidental Talmudists. We share what's beautiful in the tradition, teaching Torah, teaching history, teaching scripture, teaching the oral tradition of our sages. We have 1 million followers on Facebook, 200,000 more on Instagram. And probably half of those people, maybe a little more than half, are not Jewish. And we learn together every day. They're not trying to make me Christian. I'm not trying to make them Jewish. But we have so much in common that we can learn together. And so I know them. I know the people that this guy, the suit, flies over between New York and LA. And I know, and I tested it, and I watch them watch our film and respond to our film. They love our movie. Our movie respects the values of Red State America, gives them a thriller that they can get behind. There's no reason to have profanity or nudity in our movie, and so it's not in our movie. It takes firearms use seriously. It portrays it realistically, and it's just such a fun movie. And people can see the trailer and learn about it. We're in theaters right now at gunsandmosesmovie.com. And if you don't live near one of the theaters, we're going to be in streaming pretty soon. And then, we're just very excited about all of America seeing this movie because Hollywood is just not making movies like this, and we are.
I'm glad that you are, because everything that comes out of Hollywood these days sucks. More to Hollywood being off the, completely off the thread. Democrats are melting down after comedian Stephen Colbert gets fired. And I'm wondering, it's like, did they just discover that half the country hates Democrats? I don't think that they're discovering that the half the country hates Democrats. I think they're discovering that Stephen Colbert isn't funny.
Woke kills comedy. When you're told what you can laugh at and what you can't laugh at, who you can make fun of and who you can't make fun of. I mean, remember how Howard Stern used to be? I mean, there was nobody he wasn't going to point the finger at and ridicule. Same with Saturday Night Live, the way it used to be. Yep. But now it's all pre-approved narratives. And, I mean, they say that it's not because of this merger that they want to get approved, et cetera. And I think it's not. I think that they pay this guy a fortune. They're not getting the viewership because America is just like, you guys are not funny. Why should I stay up late and watch your show? And somebody who's like just such a different treatment of the late night hour, this Greg Gutfeld, he's doing something completely different. And while he's certainly on Fox News and has conservative values, he laughs at Trump all the time. And so I think that what's going to end up happening on CBS and NBC, they're going to get rid of all these expensive guys in their late shows, and they're going to bring in someone young, someone different, someone funny. I think we're actually at a great time in history, an inflection point, where at the end of the day, these companies need to make money, and they can only, kiss butt at the cocktail parties where they want to be accepted by having the pre-approved virtue signaling attitudes for so long before, they just get fired for running the company into the ground, and something new will come along. And so it's an exciting time where I think there's going to be better entertainment on the horizon.
Maybe it's just me, but I think I'm holding out because I know he's been blackballed, but Ricky Gervais, when he hosted the Oscars, that was the best, 15 minutes. It absolutely slaughtered. Watching the faces drop as they're all, yay, as they end up being the butt of the joke. You see the joke in the best.
He skewered them. It was hilarious.
The beauty of it was he would start off every joke with that solid thread where everyone's laughing and everyone's clapping and joking, and then it goes to that dark place, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm the butt of the joke." Damn. I absolutely love that. That was pure comedy, and it's sad because as we were discussing at the beginning of the show, the only we don't have in my generation any real comics that are out there doing the politically incorrect thing, willing to say the stuff no one's willing to say. The only comics out there, and a lot of the ones who I thought were the politically incorrect, who were willing to say all the stuff you're not supposed to say out loud, are going woke too. Like Bill Burr was the guy who'd say whatever he wanted, and then he's starting to go woke, and I'm like, dude, don't be one of those guys. Dave Chappelle is another guy who will say whatever the hell he wants, and he's gotten to the point where he's like, I don't care about making any of y'all happy. Y'all can all pound sand.
I don't agree with everything Chappelle says, but I'll be the first to admit he's freaking funny.
Yeah. And that's what I'm
and
looking for.
And he doesn't give a crap what people think.
Yeah.
God bless him for that.
That's what I'm looking for in a comedian. I want to laugh. I want to enjoy my time. I want the art form to continue. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. I'm so glad you're making movies, and as a big supporter of Second Amendment, everybody should get out there and should support Salvador's work. Again, that's Salvador Litvik, author of Let My People Laugh, the greatest Jewish jokes of all time, and
bestseller on Amazon.
See, there you go.
Sir.
And new The Guns and Moses film. Okay, this is an action thriller. You should get out there. It's John Wick for Jews. Let's get it done. All right,
let's get it done. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on.
All the best, brother. Take care.
God bless. You too.
God bless you.
All right, man. It has been a great episode of Grand State Live. We got to have a little bit more fun. I know the topics got a little deep, and I know they got a little dark and depressing for a moment. The human trafficking Jeffrey Epstein thing, especially when, after some of the major successes you've seen in the Trump administration, we're starting to look at the midterms, and we're starting to not look as pretty as we were hoping that we would. And I understand why.
The shadows are starting to cast themselves. We're gonna need to get in action, and obviously we hope the Citizens Doge plays a part in that, but we hope that everybody kind of understands the sense of urgency of where the country is right now.
I completely agree. We're going to have Scott Brown on. We're going to have Chris Bright. We're going to have as many of the federal guests or federal candidates on to discuss their races, and hopefully we'll have some of the mayoral candidates and Senate candidates, so on and so forth, because I think, and you know what, I'm open to having on Kelly Ayotte and anybody who's willing to try and fight for freedom and liberty, and I don't have to agree with you 100% of the time, as long as we're firing in the same direction, as long as we can come together on the things that matter, like let's work together. All right, and we'll save the stuff that we disagree on till later. But we already knew that it was going to get to the way it is, right? We knew this coming into this election cycle. A lot of the stuff Trump promised was not the type of stuff that you're going to get immediate results from. These are problems that have persisted over the course of decades, and we have to fix this because what's coming is we're speeding towards a cliff. And if we don't put on the brakes fast, there's no coming back from it. So, sorry to end on such a sad note, but I hope you get activated. Contact Citizens Doge, help them out with everything. Get activated in your local community, because if you're not getting activated in your local community, you are a burden to the U.S. society. Yes, I'm putting it on you. It's your fault. The world is failing. It's your fault. Okay? Benjamin Franklin said, it's Republic if you can keep it. Get off your ass. Now, tune back into Grant State Live next week. We will hopefully have Keith Hansen back in studio. Up next is Shadow Band. Get all of your content from RAMTV at RAMTV.com. You can find Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast, Drew Allen Show, Shadow Band, and Grant State Live there. You can get all of your episodes on all social media. You can find Citizens Doge on all.
We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.